It does tell me that the audio might not be playing or recorded. So let's hope that you can attend the entirety of it, because usually that button does not pop up. So we will see how that goes. But welcome to Building a Dream Team, the Hiring Playbook. I am the speaker for today, Wendy Aldaman. I own Career Elevation. We are a dental-specific recruiting company. We love to help with the hiring process, and when I am not hiring, I've been in love with dentistry for the last 15 years as an assistant, as a manager, now as a recruiter and a business owner. When I'm not hiring, when I'm not interviewing, when I'm not working, I love constructing magnet tile towers with my kids, even though my son loves to knock them down. I also enjoy cooking and baking and crafting. My mission is to help small businesses, specifically dental offices, with their hiring and onboarding process to help foster long-term growth. Let's get hiring right from the start. I know that can be really difficult sometimes, and that is what this day is all about, is let's get this correct. So this course is designed specifically for dental offices, providing essential tools and strategies to conduct effective interviews, as well as learning how to ask the right questions versus just doing a good interview, evaluating the candidates objectively, creating and structuring the hiring process that will attract and retain those top talent candidates. So I'm going to also give you real world examples and advice that you can leave this course feeling comfortable in your ability to identify the best candidates for your team. We have 5 main topics that we're going to hit on, but really it's like a million topics. So I tried my best to condense it into 5 main topics. Where are the candidates going to be looking? How to create a compelling job ad, streamlining your hiring, interviewing mastery, and then first impressions, how to get everything together for those first impressions. I should also make a mention, we're going to take a short break at 11:15 for 10 minutes or so, and then we'll get back started. And once we get a little closer to 11:15, we will break where it seems like it could be best. So getting into our first course topic, where are candidates looking? Optimizing your online profiles for hiring success. I think people often forget to see things from the candidate's point of view versus just you as the hiring manager or you as the employer's side. So keep that in mind. That very much of what we're talking about today is thinking about everything from the candidate's point of view, and I will touch base back on a lot of those points as we're going through. So for where candidates look, how also do you measure up to the other offices in the area or the other job ads that are out there? So the candidates are going to be looking, a lot of these are very self-explanatory, but again, are you looking at your company through the lens of the candidate's eyes or your eyes as the employer? So let's increase your likability presence on each platform that you utilize, or even if you don't utilize it, if somebody in the past has used it, or even if somebody in the past hasn't used it within your office, sometimes other people, either candidates or employees, depending on a situation, may put your information out on a different platform that you're not aware of. So I want you to be able to have a lot of different areas to look at. So please take a screenshot of this, or I do have a worksheet at the end that you'll have check boxes so you can come back and check boxes like, yes, I've done these and these and these. 40% of the candidates that are going to be looking online, specifically Indeed, but I know this is going to work for every platform. 40% of candidates will look at your company profile, meaning they're going to look to see if they can find any reviews. If your reviews on Indeed or that job posting board, if those reviews are really poor or really negative, it's going to be really difficult for you to then be able to continue hiring, because about half of the people are looking. And if you have 2 stars with 5 reviews, or 1 star, and even 1 review. Sometimes that makes a huge difference. So let's increase that likability and ask your current team members or your patients or your family members or somebody to leave you a review in the applicable place where it makes sense for them to leave you a review. I don't want you to do fraud or lie or anything like that, but I think it's a very good idea to leave reviews. If you are a startup, then it would probably be a good idea to ask your current team members or maybe past patients. Even if it's a startup across the country, they can talk about how they've had experiences with you and how your dentistry is really good. Maybe not about the office, but about you, and they can address your name. So making sure that everything is legitimate and honest is also another really great point to think about and to hone into. So go down a rabbit hole and find all of the dirt on your office. Search your name. And anywhere and everywhere. Start with Google, of course. Search your office name as well as your personal name, the doctor's name. Any doctors that you work with as well. Any hygienists that you work with. Is there any information that's out there that you can edit, that you can change? Don't try to ask somebody else to take or to remove anything that's on their social media. I don't think that that's right. But what you can change, what you can edit, or what you can bring to light for these candidates that are going to be looking, that are going to be digging, because it's really those, like, it might be like a 1 in a million chance that somebody is looking this deep into your company, but are they waffling to even apply? We want the people to research a lot about your company. That's very important, honestly. If they're not researching about your company, it might not be a good fit in the beginning. We do interviews all the time and candidates are like, what office is this for? That's a really big red flag for us. So keep that in mind, that hopefully they are doing their research, that you're encouraging them to do the research, and that you are, bringing good reviews to light. You're posting photos and things like that, and that you're having brand consistency across the platform. So one example that I can also give you is for your website. Recently, I did a sales call with a doctor, and his website was something like generaldentist.com or something like very generic like that. And he was an endodontist. And I was like, I don't quite understand why it would say generaldentist.com, but you're an endodontist. Like, that's very confusing to the candidates. Like, it almost seems like that you're lying, or that something's not accurate, something's not true. And so making sure that there's brand consistency across the board. If you need somebody to help you with marketing and brand consistency, I can refer you to a few people. I don't do it, but I'm just informing you of this. Now, when I got into the sales call, it made more sense why he did that. He had purchased 3 practices, and one was a general dental practice, and that was just focused on endo. And so it made sense in that form, but it doesn't necessarily make sense if you haven't been in the community for 16 years and you don't know that guy, So making sure that you're paying attention to that as well. So let's also think about what is to be evaluated from the candidate. So these are 4 points that candidates talk to us about all the time in the interviewing process. So start consistently adding photos of your team members or of the office, of patient interaction. Not necessarily that you have to post photos of your patients, but you can post interactions like, one of my patients brought me in cookies today, and I'm so excited. I love them so much. I'm so excited to share them with the rest of the team. Or, my patient today said that I changed her life with the smile that she has now with these veneers or something. Just anything like that. And you don't necessarily have to get permission if it is just a phrase that you are reiterating and you're not obviously giving patient information, things like that. So make sure that you're cognizant before you post, but that's just another thing that you can add to your social media or to your website that doesn't take a lot of time or effort, but it shows brand consistency, that you're doing a good job and that your team culture is there, right? And so you should also be posting and emphasizing why they would be proud to work at your practice. Is it a new and up-to-date practice? Is it really old and outdated and antiquated? You know, what can you do to show that they would be proud to work here? Are you doing really great dentistry? Are your patients really happy about how you care and that you have really good bedside manners? Things like that. Growth opportunity is huge within dentistry. We hear that all the time when we're doing interviews. So where can you grow? And that doesn't necessarily just mean where can the individuals grow, the candidates grow, the employees grow, but also how are you growing as the office, right? So I think that's another important thing. The office should also be growing. You don't want to stay stagnant. You want to continue where that might be helpful, okay? There are a few different options that I have in my notes here for growth. So ozone therapy, guided biofilm therapy, myofunctional, RDA, EFTA, insurance management, medical billing, sleep, same-day milling. There's a lot of different options for growth that people don't necessarily think of. Is it something that you want to do, that you can do, that is of interest to you or you know, anybody in the practice? Now, also make sure that when you are bringing somebody on that's going to be a myofunctional therapist, for example, that they are going to stay with the company for a long time. You're not just going to bring in patients to do myofunctional therapy and then that person leaves. So give them a timeline. You know, do we start doing that at year 2 or 3 or 5, where you can lead up to that, but we're not going to offer services until, you know, this date. Just be cognizant of that. It takes 6 months for a new hire to be profitable in their position. So you should always be looking out for your next team member, because your current team members are always growing. So I want in the next 48 hours for you to put together what kind of candidate that you're looking for. And we're going to talk about that in the next few slides. And to ask your team members to leave you reviews where you're lacking most. So if Yelp is a place that you don't have very many reviews, ask them to leave you reviews on Yelp. Ask your patients to do that. Ask them to leave reviews on Indeed about the company, about the practice. Very important to do that. There is going to continue to be movement within dentistry, of course. This 35% of the respondents who filled out this survey through Dental Post, 35% are considering a job change. And last year it was 41%. So a lot less, which means there's going to be less movement within employees going forward, hopefully, of course. And what does that mean for you and your company and for you interviewing? All right, now let's get into creating the job ad to attract the right candidate. These are the 6 areas that we're going to look at. So narrowing down what kind of candidate that you're looking for, the importance of using a correct job title in your ad, utilizing your job duties and benefits in that ad, maybe offering a referral bonus, which we'll talk about, and then the 6 sections of the job ad that we will build, essentially, and then also talking about, should you add video into your ads? Is that something that could be of benefit to you? So let's deconstruct the whole thing first. Let's take a look at your existing job ad if you already have one. Are you putting your best foot forward? Is your messaging clear? And do you even know what you need and want for your office and for your team? So these are the things that are very transferable from one office to the next for pretty much anybody within dentistry. This is what we keep in mind when we are doing interviews. We think about the personality traits. We want somebody to be hungry, humble, and smart. That's from the book Patrick Lencioni, The Ideal Team Player. And then I added a few others that make sense for dentistry. So we want somebody to be ethical. We want them to do good dentistry. We would like them to be outgoing and friendly with the patients, to be empathetic and caring, to be organized, and then self-motivated as well. We want them to ooze the love of dentistry. So we want to work with people who want to love dentistry, who want to be in dentistry. We want to work with people that our patients love, because that's just going to help across the board. And if you don't want that person to be your hygienist or your assistant, if you are the patient, then why should you have them in your practice? Now, I know that sometimes that's really hard to chew, especially most dental practices right now are lacking hygienists, right? So if we're saying, oh, well, this hygienist is somebody that's okay, okay is never a yes. I know that it really stinks in the moment to have to say no to a candidate that you feel like you haven't gotten any other candidates as a hygienist in months. I know that that's super hard, but it will be best in the long run to find somebody that's going to be a good fit, a good culture fit, versus just a butt in the seat. A butt in a seat will never be helpful, and ultimately, a lot of times, will not be profitable. So you might have the opportunity to bring this individual in and have them do dentistry for a little while. If you do that and you have team members you already have a really great culture, really great team members, ask your team members, hey guys, I think this person might just be a butt in a seat. Let's talk to them and say, let's hire you for 3 months or for 6 months until we can find another hygienist. But ultimately, I don't know if you're the right fit. Then you continue searching. You're transparent the entire way. And with that, you are helping them to understand, your team members to understand that they are so important to you and to the longevity of the practice. So I think that that's a very, very important thing that will make or break a candidate and the rest of the team, is somebody who oozes the love of dentistry. Another point that I think is really helpful to look at is somebody who's going to enjoy continuing education and helping their team members to learn what they know, and also to be able to learn from the other team members as well. And then, of course, having good time management. Those are some huge skills that we really must have in dentistry. If we make our patients wait 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes plus, that's going to be a really negative thing in your practice in the long run. So if you're a hygienist, if you're asking them, what's a downside to you? If they say my time management skills are not great, you really need to highlight that, because that's something that really is a downfall to a lot of practices. So there's a worksheet that will go along with this that you'll get emailed at the end. I have several worksheets and documents that I'm going to send to you afterwards. And so I want you to make sure that you're doing this. Most people don't do this, and they don't write down who they're actually looking for. But why this is a game changer is because, especially if you are not the only person that's doing the interviewing process, if there's a few hands in the pot, you will be so much better off by writing this down ahead of time. Also, then you are having the ability to think about, what will the longevity of your current team members look like, your current culture, and is this playing into it? Or again, is this just a butt in a seat? So making sure that you're writing down all of the things that you actually want. Also, there are some candidates who are really, really great, and you get along swimmingly with them. And with having a really great personality, sometimes you might forget to ask the really important questions, which we'll get into the questions a little bit later on. But this will help to make sure that all of the points are together and your mind is clear. You have exactly what you want written down. So narrow what kind of candidate that you're looking for. Things that you don't want to hear in an interview. These are our pet peeves. Is the young people today do X, Y, and Z. We always will make a red flag when a candidate does that, because you can learn from anybody at any stage of learning. And if you are completely closed off to that, that is really detrimental to your practice. So we don't want you to say, you know, the young people do this, this, and this. Well, they might do this, this, and this, but they're also great because of A, B, and C as well. So don't just be very, very tentative on people that say the young people of today. Also, one of my favorite books is called The Rookie Smart by Liz Whiteman, I believe it is. She is phenomenal, and I love her way of thinking. You can have somebody that has been doing dentistry, for example, for 25 years. You bring somebody in that's been doing dentistry for 25 days, and the person who has the experience could learn from the person who has only been in it for a month. It's really dependent on what each individual learns and where they learn it from, or you don't know what they also have. Okay, getting back into it. So what other things don't you want to hear? If you're interviewing an office manager or a front office position, I don't do that as a manager. The front desk does that. That's their job. You can obviously take that for any role, considering that that's not what you want here, right? I also don't like the word front desk instead of team member or treatment coordinator. That might just be a pet peeve of ours. If they say that they don't enjoy difficult conversations and then they don't follow it up with anything, they just say, you know, that's something that I don't want to do, is have difficult conversations with the employees, then you're not going to be able to have difficult conversations with them as an employee. And that person is probably going to end up leaving without having any kind of a conversation with you. And that's a big bummer. If you are able to have somebody that's okay with having difficult conversations and is okay with constructive criticism, they are going to be a better fit in your practice. People will also say that, people will have negative energy. They're a negative person. If they're not pleasant to talk with on the phone interview, you probably don't want them in your practice. Even if they're clinical and they're not going to be on the phone very often, if they're not pleasant on the phone, they're probably not going to be pleasant in person. I also will hear sometimes people saying, I hate people. I honestly used to be a person that used to say, I hate people. But I have changed, and I'm very grateful for that. But that is something that you should take into consideration, especially if you're hearing that in an interview. I hate dealing with insurance. Now, if they follow up with, but it's because I don't know enough about it, or because I'm learning it, or because of, you know, whatever the situation is, consider what they say, but then also if there's a follow-up sentence that could potentially omit what you don't want to hear in an interview. Let's also say, I think it's quite terrible to hear when a candidate will say, I've applied for a lot of jobs, which one is this? Or I'm always interviewing. Those are some phrases that are a really big red flag for us. If you're always interviewing, if you always have your resume out there, you are not going to ever be happy where you're at. It doesn't necessarily mean if you are here and this is the best office in the entire world, if you're always interviewing, you have some internal things that you need to be looking at, in my opinion. So be wary of that person. Now, what requirements are you not willing to flex on? You can take a screenshot if you're not on your phone with this, or I'm going to send you this link at the end. But this is going over what things you're looking for in a candidate to help you figure that out. So that a worksheet so you can work through this. So what requirements are you not willing to flex on? Can they work all of the days or hours? Is that something that's a really big deal in your practice or not? Some practices, it's a really big deal, and some practices don't care at all. They can make things work as long as they, I've heard people say exceptions are made for exceptional people, and I really, really like that saying. Are you needing at least 1 year of experience? Let's say for a front office team member or for a dental assistant. Are you willing to train them? You know, what can you flex on? They need to have some kind of a positive attitude. Again, oozing the love of dentistry. If I were a patient, that I would feel comfortable with this person working in my mouth or talking to me on the phone or taking my money. And then number 5, you want to be able to spend enough time with this candidate that you could see yourself working with them, not just bonding with them and sharing interests and getting along with them well. You want to actually be able to envision yourself working with this individual. Are you going to be happy and satisfied with this person by your side day in and day out? Do they have a good phone voice and correct grammar? That one's, of course, self-explanatory. Are they dressing for the position that they want, not necessarily the one that they have? Make sure that they're dressed appropriately. All right, now let's get into the importance of using the right job title. Think about the way that the candidate is going to be searching for the job. You might have a job posting for number 4, patient access representative, and really that's a dental receptionist. Well, are your candidates going to be looking up patient access representative, or are they going to be looking up a dental receptionist? These are position titles that I've actually found myself. Number ninja as an accountant. I don't think an accountant is ever going to type in number ninja into the job search to find their next job. Now, but you can also kind of deconstruct this a little bit, and you can take it in the sense of when you're doing your Boolean search, which we'll talk about momentarily, when you do your Boolean search, that you will put that into your Boolean search. If you know of a DSO, for example, that is in your town that uses patient access representative, and you have found that they produce good quality candidates from that DSO or from that group practice, that's something that you can use to your advantage if you know that. This is also where you can do some more research into those companies and go to their career pages, see if they do have different or funky titles. You know, a PCC, a patient care coordinator, is another one that maybe people are looking up, but maybe they're just looking up dental receptionist. So think about what is accurate in your area and what will make sense for you to have as your job title. I would probably keep it more generic, more traditional. And then if you do have a job title that you want them to have, so if you want them to be called a patient service assistant instead of a dental assistant, then put that in your job title. Make sure that that's in your offer letter, that's in your onboarding information. Make sure that you have that readily available for them to understand and to know that that's what their title is. Utilizing your job duties and your benefits. So what is the importance of job wage transparency? So as you can see, this source at the bottom, candidates are 54% more likely to apply to a job that the pay is listed. So imagine if you are a candidate and you're scrolling through the list of assistant positions or the list of hygiene positions, associate, whatever the position is, and you see all of the wages on there, and then you see half of them that don't have the wage on there. Is that something that is going to make a candidate apply or to not apply? The studies show, yes, half of the individuals will or will not, I guess, depending on how you look at it, will or will not apply to your position because of the wage or because there's not a wage. Now, a lot of these platforms will give you several different options of how you can advertise your wage. If it's starting at, if it's a range, if it's up to a certain dollar amount. You know, unfortunately, it doesn't say negotiable. There's not a button for that, or, you know, that will be competitive. So whatever makes sense for your practice and for your needs, as well as to appease the rest of your team members. That's another thing to consider, that your team members are probably going to end up seeing your job ad. You should be transparent with them and asking them, like I was talking about earlier. You should be able to ask them, what do you want in a team member? What's important to you? This is a whole team office, whole team culture situation. You don't want just anybody in there, and you want the opinion of the rest of your team. So making sure that you have the wages on there that the rest of your team members are understanding about, that's a lot more important than you know. We hear a lot of times that people will leave their job, or that they're upset with their position because the company is posting their job $5 an hour more than what they're making for a new grad, for example. I've even seen people go so far as they work for, let's say, maybe an office with like 2 doctors and like 15 employees, and there's a job that's posted. I've even heard people say, I applied for that job because it was $5 an hour more. And I'm sure their boss was like, why are you applying? But it is simply because they want that $5 an hour more. They want to continue to stay there. But why is that $5 an hour more not being offered to your current employees? How much information should be added about the benefits? We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that slide. But this is also a point where you can kind of be a little bit creative about your benefits. If you don't have a ton of extra money in the bank, or if you are a new practice or things are not set up yet, you can have a timeline. So let's say that you're going to be getting 401k in 2026, or you're going to be adding on an additional week of PTO at their 2 years or their 3 years or their 5 years. How much time do you have in order before you get to that, where you have the ability to grow into that benefit, into those hours, into that pay? You can also talk about, you could potentially offer for them to take off 4 days a year that is going to be paid, where they can do free, like a free dental day, or they can go into the community, where that will help fulfill them, if that's something that's, of course, important to them. And they get a day off from work. They get the ability to network within the community, and they get out there. They get the ability to also spread and share your name. So, that's a very unconventional benefit that you could add. Now, I'm saying these benefits, but you should also know that you don't want your job ad to be super long. And we'll talk about adding this into the video at the end. But if you are open to creating a video about your practice, that's where you can kind of elaborate a bit more of this, and you can share with your potential candidates why it would be so good to work with you, what kind of benefits, what's important to you, what's important to your current team members, and how can that make a difference? And then what benefits can you be flexible on? Be cognizant. I know there's a lot of people who they'll create a handbook and then they don't look at their handbook for years and years and years. Now, your handbook should be updated every 6 to 12 months. I can refer you to a great HR specialist if you're looking for one. But what are you able to be flexible on? I don't want you to end up with any kind of a lawsuit because you offered certain benefits to one person and not to another person. That absolutely could happen. And so I need you to be cognizant of what your handbook says and how it's worded. So if your handbook at the top of the benefits section says all of these are able to be negotiated, this is just a general form, or this is something that everybody gets, but at your onboarding or at your offer letter, we've discussed all of these different benefits that are on the table. Definitely something to keep in mind and consider. Now let's take a pause. Now that you know who you want, I want you to reflect back to your team members and inquire with them if they know somebody who fits this mold. It's, I think, important to figure out who you want before you ask your team members. And obviously they're going to know a good range of who you're going to need in the practice, but maybe they don't necessarily know 100% of where the practice is going. So that's also something that you should share with them as well, is where are you hoping to go within the practice? Where are you hoping to grow as a possibility, as a goal, as a date in the future? What does that look like? So who's going to fit into the mold? People often will ask me, Lindy, what kind of a bonus? How much of a bonus should I give? Well, I think it could be a good idea to say, here's all of the list of different qualifications and requirements that we're looking for. Here's the personality that we're looking for. If you find this person and we hire them on, I will give you $1,000 bonus until X date. So like in 30 days, so that you'll get $1,000 because we need to find somebody rather quickly. And then 2 weeks after that, let's say the bonus drops down to $750. And then 2 weeks after that, it drops down to $500. You can just do $1,000 across the board, but this will entice them to get names to you faster and for you to go through the hiring process. Now, I wouldn't suggest you to give the $1,000 bonus to your team member day one of the person starting. But you could do like $100 at the time of hire or $250 at the time of hire, and then more at 90 days and more, and then the final like 500 at 6 months or something along those lines. That could be helpful. You could do all $1,000 at 6 months because that will help for your team members to keep them trained, and ultimately you should figure out within the first 30 days if this candidate is even going to be right in your practice or not. Let's talk about the job ad itself. These are the 6 points that I always make in my job ads before or like during while I'm making the job ad. So these are things that that you can take into play for yours. I like to call them hooker questions, not necessarily hook questions, but how are you hooking these individuals in? So do you want to work with a boss and team that doesn't micromanage and thoroughly trust what you're doing and that it's right for the office and the patient? Are you interested in working with an office that does more than just bread and butter dentistry? We're looking for you too. So you're hooking them in and showcasing why they should work with you, right? And then you're going to talk about compelling and friendly points about the office. So I changed the name. This is an ad that we had used, but I changed the name. Here at the Cosmetic Dentist, we offer a diverse landscape of treatments so that we are looking for a team member who will be comfortable in not only working closely and assisting the doctor chairside, but also fabricating and processing occlusal guards, performing intraoral digital scans instead of traditional impressions, capturing diagnostic 3D printing cone beam scans, conducting Zoom whitening, etc. We are incredibly proud to be a close-knit team that prides itself on teamwork, communication, and professionalism. This dentist is a huge fan of digital dentistry and technology, and always make sure that the office is up to date and has the latest and greatest technology. So ideally, we're looking for somebody that is comfortable with technology or open to be trained. Our current assistant, so this is giving somebody the heads up, our current assistant has been with us for 28 years, and we're looking to add on another strong assistant to help serve our current patients. If you're looking for an office that can get you to be an RDA, we would love to help sponsor you and get you into that program as well. So then this is talking about that you already have another assistant that's been there for 28 years. You're looking to add, it doesn't say replace, looking to add another strong assistant. And then also this is where growth comes into play for this individual. So we are looking to help you to become an RDA. We're going to help you get sponsored to go through that process. So these are some important things to consider. Now, let's talk about the services that the office offers and make sure that this is relevant to what they're actually going to want. So, for example, a dental assistant, an RDA, does not honestly probably care about the EMS, GBT, airflow unit, and Cavitron. But I put that in here so that you can see what this about the office is supposed to look like, in my opinion. Now, if it's an assistant, they're probably going to want to know if you do endo, if you want to do implants, if you have an iTero, if you have a 3D printer, digital x-rays. There's a lot of things that this individual is going to want to know as an RDA versus an RDH. So making sure that you're catering this service and this information to the position that you're hiring for, and that this job ad is not just going to be a copy paste from assistant to receptionist to hygienist to associate, that you're changing things to make it make them feel more included in on that area. Okay, now the next section that I typically will add is benefits. What do your benefits look like? And this is where you can be a little bit flexible, where you can, like I was saying earlier, you can say, here's all the benefits. And then at the bottom, you can say negotiable on PTO or monthly bonus or whatever they have an option to help with. I want these benefits to match what that looks like. We're not wanting to create the job ad to be a million miles long, of course, but giving them enough information to wet their whistle, if you will. So this office has the option of 401k or Roth with a match. A lot of offices don't offer this match. Sometimes it'll be 3% or 5%. I've seen even up to 10%, which is phenomenal, but doesn't happen all too often. So what is a good benefit that your team members really like? Or when you are doing the interview process, feel free to change this. If you're in the interview process and you're talking to people and they're like, holy cow, you do match up to 5%, what should you edit your ad to be like for your area? Some offices don't offer PTO or it's accumulative. This office is phenomenal. They offer 2 weeks of PTO after a year, and then up to 5 weeks of PTO if they stay within the company for 10 years. So that's another bonus. If you have found that you have a lot of, if you kind of have a revolving door, you could totally do this. And if you want to work on your culture, you can emphasize the good points of them staying with your practice, right? So if you have a revolving door and you're trying to get a better culture, this PTO structure could work really, really well for you to help entice people to stay. Now, then that's where you can have in your handbook where there's stipulations about how you can use your PTO and do you get any off and, X, Y, and Z. So keeping that in mind too. Paid holidays, there's a lot of offices these days that either they do it at 90 days, but there's a lot more that are doing it upon hire. Honestly, upon hire, you're not going to end up paying out a ton of holidays. And so why not give them that option to be able to get another paid day? There's 90% of people in America live paycheck to paycheck. So if you can give them that extra day's pay within that first 90 days, they're going to be so thankful. They're going to be so grateful. And it's a really important thing to consider for your company. We'll talk about it in the video in just a little bit, what you can put into the video. But for the continuing education, do you want to put a cap on it? Do you want to offer any and all continuing education credits that they're interested in that you'll pay for it, or only to get their license renewed? If they don't have a license, are you still willing to put continuing education on there? Or if they're a front office team member, do you want to put ADOM, American Association of Dental Office Management? Do you want to put that as continuing education on here? How are you going to help them up level and grow? Because if they're growing, you're growing. And if they're growing, they should also be getting bonuses. So it's a win-win for everybody. And of course, for your patients too. Scrubs are provided and laundered, which is another really nice thing. You come in with street clothes, you leave with street clothes. You can have less laundry in your house. Isn't that great? Dental coverage for yourself and your immediate family. I think that there should be, if not, there should be some stipulations put around that. You can be very loose with the stipulations, but this, if you have something in your handbook that says, up to $2,500 per year per person, or for your immediate family, for your children up to the age of 18 or 25 or 26, or indefinitely, every office is slightly different with what dental coverage they're willing to do. But if you wanted to put a cap on that, say that you have to pay for the lab bill, they have to do it in off hours, that you have to, pay the assistant, I don't know, whatever you want to do, of course, but how does that fit into your benefits? And then starting pay, again, this goes into pay transparency, and also keeping in mind too, that if you decide to change your pay structure halfway through, then make sure you are being cognizant that you change your pay structure in the ad itself, not just in the job posting platform, that you're also coming into the job ad too. So keep that in mind. Now, the hours, a lot of offices just have a traditional like 8 to 5, but there are some offices that will have kind of weird office days or hours like this, or I've even seen like 7 to 7. When I interview candidates for an office that says 7 to 7, for example, there are a lot of people that are like, I don't want to work all those hours. Well, do you have the option to work 6 hours or 12 hours? What does that look like? You know, I put in a little bit of extra information for this practice because 40 hours, obviously you can tell that this is over 40 hours. And it's also enticing that you don't have to work on weekends. Now, if you have to work on weekends, where are you going to benefit them to showcase, you know, you will still have a work-life balance. If you're working on a Saturday half day, you can get Tuesdays off or something like that. So keeping those things in mind, because people do need to run errands and live and do other things. Now, getting into the video delivery itself, this is what I put at the bottom of my listing. Here's a short video that explains a little bit more about the position, the benefits, the company. Please watch and hear a little bit more about the job. Please feel free to text the number below as well. And then you'll put the video link in there. The easiest way to do the video is to record it on Zoom, to upload it to YouTube, unlisted, so they have to have the link, and then put it in here. We will refresh the link. We here at Career Elevation will refresh the link on our job ads so that it doesn't look like the job has been posted for 6 months or for 12 months, or we are recycling a job video that we used 3 years ago. We will repost it so that it looks fresh and the candidates don't think that the job has been posted for 12 months. It might be, but that might not be a problem for yourself. That might just be a problem for the area. I can give you for example, we are working with an office that's in Cincinnati, and the metrics within Indeed, because that's the biggest platform that we use and has the most robust reporting system, they show us that we have more clicks than pretty much any other job ad out there for Cincinnati area. But still have very, very little applies for hygiene. And it's just in the area. It's saying you're doing a better job than anybody else in the area. We just have so few candidates that they're not interested pretty much in any office. So this video delivery, I think, can be very beneficial if you are willing to do this. I would also suggest you to stick to some points. Make sure the video is 5 to 10 minutes, 10 minutes max, and say who you are, say what your position is. If you're the doctor, if you're the manager, make sure that you have a friendly, smiling face, right? If you go into the video and you are super monotone, nobody wants to work with that. There's a lot of things to consider. But again, like I said in the beginning, keeping the candidate's thoughts top of mind throughout this entirety of it is going to really help you. So think about what they would want to hear in the video about the office or about the company. This is where you can talk more about your benefits that are negotiable, and you can explain a little bit more about that. This is where you can talk about the hours. Remember, people, a lot of times these days, people are watching videos at 1.5 or 2 times speed. If that's the case, then you can talk very fast. People are just absorbing content so much faster these days than what they were before. So you can talk yourself on 1.25 speed rather than talking slow. If that's a challenge for you, then you can encourage them in the beginning of the video to watch it at super speed if you want to. But you definitely don't want a video that's going to be like 30 minutes long. People are not going to have the attention span. But if they see that it's 5 minutes and they can watch it at 2 times speed, they're definitely going to be able to watch that or listen to it at the least. Now, this is what the job ad will look similar to. So we'll have those 3 hooker questions. You'll have a compelling and kind way to describe your office and what you're looking for. You'll talk about the office services. So, do you have endo and implants and ortho and things like that? What benefits do you offer? What days and hours? And then if you are willing to have the video in here, I would highly suggest you to put that at the bottom. Another thing that is really interesting is when I started highlighting, text me on my cell at 618. When I started highlighting that in job ads, we started getting so many more individuals who would send us a message via text or give us a call directly, versus when we didn't have that. And it's helpful because we're allowing them to communicate with us at the drop of a hat. Sometimes people will apply to a position and they'll say to me, I applied to 10 offices in my area over the last few weeks and I haven't heard back from any of them. Well, if they don't know how to use Indeed, or if the person who was supposed to be doing hiring got in an accident and they're not able to get on there and nobody else knows how to do it, then you might have had the perfect office, but they're not responding back on Indeed. And so giving them the option to text or to call a private number versus the office number is super helpful, super beneficial. Or you can also say something like, if you want to send me your resume to this email, I will make sure to check it every single day while we have this job listing open. So then again, it will make somebody feel a little bit more compelled to send an email. Emails sometimes are another thing too, that people won't get back to you for several days. And so if you say, I will get back to you within 24 hours, that's something that you should uphold when you have the job posted and the job listed here. Now, if you don't need them to have dental experience, how do you weed through those individuals? Because if you're looking for an assistant or a receptionist, for example, that does not need a license, that you're willing to take on and that you're willing to train, you're willing to put them through ADAM courses, or you're willing to put them through a dental assisting course, or you are just going to teach them chairside, how are you actually going to weed through those individuals? So this is another paragraph that I'll put in here. At this time, we do require a cover letter or a short paragraph emailed or messaged on Indeed or messaged on whatever job platform, or texted, whatever you want to add in there, whatever you're comfortable with, why you're interested in this position and why you're interested in dental, and tell us the top 2 reasons why this could be a good fit for you. Now, I say that this is a requirement because if they are not detailed enough to put this into a document, put this into a cover letter, if they're not willing to even just type out a short paragraph, they are not willing to do the things that are going to be necessary to get into your practice. And to me, if they're not willing to do that, then that means that they actually don't really care about dentistry. They don't really care about your office. This is just another position that they're applying to. I also, when I get candidates through Indeed or through texting or whatever platform, and they will say, I'm interested in this position, we will text them. At this time we do require a cover letter. If you're interested, please tell us why you're interested and why dental would be a good fit for you, or why this office would be a good fit for you. And if they don't respond, then we're not going to respond back to them until they respond. We shouldn't be the ones that want the job more than they do. We might want them more than what they might need a job or want a job, but we can't show that. We can't kind of emulate that, right? So I already did kind of talk a little bit about how to create the video and then the recommended talking points. I would highly suggest you to go back to this and have your job ad open when you are creating the video and go from top down. You probably don't really have to talk about the hooker questions or a compelling kind way. This is not you to read the job ad by any means. This is for you to explain more about the practice. I would also suggest you to have in the description box below of the YouTube video for where you're making this video to have the office hours, the office address, your office website even. Just keep in mind that Indeed does not give you a hyperlink. So they have to take that and copy paste it into their browser to get to it. And then they have to watch it. Now, if you are going to take them away once and then you're going to give them your website, then you're taking them away a second time. They have to be really convinced that you are their practice for them to remember, because we have a very short attention span. Let's be honest. We all do. They have to remember, oh, I was applying to this job. Let me go back to Indeed. People have so many distractions in life, and text messages are a distraction. They're already probably going to be on their phone. About 60% of users use their phone over a desktop. So keeping that in mind, that you might lose them. So if you put your website on there, that could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing. Put your social media on there. You can put your cell phone number in the description box below of the YouTube video too, so that they have another way to get back to you if they forgot where they were, or they lost the page, or whatever. Especially if you're using YouTube, you can look back at your history, and hopefully they're looking at things like that. So just be cognizant of the different avenues that you're pulling somebody away. Okay, let's talk about streamlining your hiring and hire smarter, not harder. So this is about Boolean searches and understanding the essentials to Boolean searches. And then I'm going to give you some templates for dental about how to utilize this. I definitely rarely hear about Boolean searches on any dental platform. It's not something that I think a lot of people understand or know. And so hopefully this is not new information for you, but a Boolean search it's called a Boolean operator. And so they use and, or, not to narrow or to broaden a search. And then you can also use quotations or parentheses as well. We'll get into that in just a moment. And it helps you to be more efficient, accurate, and potentially gathering all opportunities versus you taking so much time to look at an individual. This would also be very beneficial if you're looking for somebody that has the personality or has the experience, and maybe they're not in dental. If you're hiring somebody who maybe has been in medical or has been an office manager in medical, something along those lines, this could be super, super helpful for you. Obviously, it can be helpful for anybody in any area, but that's just another thing to consider on this end. So, and when you're using the and operator combines two or more search criteria into one string. And when you use and operator, you can narrow your search results to include only the results satisfying both of the requirements. So for example, if you were looking for a dental front office team member with experience in dentrix and insurance, your Boolean search string would include dental and insurance so that you will get the results of both of those criteria. If it still doesn't make sense, it will all come together at the end, I promise. So if we're using or operator, it's similar to and, but it expands the search. So you're going to include one of the criteria or both of the criteria, or just a separate one, one, two, or both of the options. So if you wanted a dental assistant that's either an RDA or a CDA, your Boolean string would search RDA or CDA. Now, if you're doing not or a minus symbol, not and minus symbol are the same thing, used interchangeably. Let's say, for example, if you're searching for a hygienist, you might want to filter out results like hygiene assistant, because that might clutter your search, might get you too excited in the beginning, right? And so in this case, your Boolean search would look like not hygiene assistant or minus hygiene assistant. Be mindful that some search engines only recognize the minus symbol and not the not. So you might want to either Google it ahead of time or to use ChatGPT to see if they would know, depending on the platform. ChatGPT knows a lot more than you think, FYI. So utilize that to the best of your ability. Parentheses. They allow you to group multiple Boolean search strings into one complex candidate search. For example, you could use the search dental receptionist or dental front desk and Dentrix to get the results searching for dental receptionist or the front desk, and that also contains Dentrix experience. So then having both of those will potentially help you out. All right, and then quotations. They allow you to get results containing an exact phrase. Okay, so an exact phrase like registered dental hygienist in quotation marks will narrow your search to only resulting in this specific phrase. Keep in mind that if somebody has misspelled their title or abbreviated, you could miss them. So make sure that you're adding all potential options. And again, I'm going to give you an example here in just a moment. And there is some overlap in quotations, and the or allows for flexibility and variety between terms. For example, without or, you would have to run separate searches for dental hygienist and for RDH. Quotations will help you target specific phrases. And then example here being without quotes, searching dental hygienist with no quotes might turn up results like dental assistant or dental hygiene program. If they're in dental hygiene program, that might not necessarily be a bad thing, but you might have to wait for them for a little while. So this is what the Boolean string should or could look like when you're searching for these candidates. This is what you could basically copy and paste, and you'll get this in a document at the end as well. So obviously at the bottom, you can see that hygienist is misspelled. We did that on purpose. We want to make sure that we're capturing anybody. And there are people that use funny terms, as we have already mentioned about the job titles previously. They don't necessarily think about hiring in the sense of you hiring in them and you looking up certain terms, right? So this is where a dental school that's near you could potentially work out in your benefit. But if you have a state like I live in Michigan, so if you have a state like Michigan where we have, I think, 8 or 9 dental hygiene programs, if you have that and you're typing in only Mott Community College or Lansing Community College, for example, you could be missing out all of those other 7 locations. So keeping that in mind, you can have your Boolean string like so long. So don't worry about that. You can add in any and all of those. So keeping that in mind. So this is what a hygienist one can look like. It is also a good idea too that your abbreviations in titles, it's a good idea to include both uppercase and lowercase for DA. Like right here I have EFTA or EDA or DA, and then it's spelled out. So expanded functions, dental assistant, expanded duties, dental assistant, and then I also have in little letters DA or RDA or CDA or EFTA or EDA. Because different websites, different platforms will utilize Boolean strings differently. They're not all identical, the Boolean strings. So that's why you want to have as much as you possibly can and then see what results will help you. And then at the end, there's another little trick. So you will get these, but this is in case you wanted to read it as we're going through. This is also where you can put some interesting names, like dental patient access coordinator, for example, or dental patient service representative. Those are just not names that are typical in dental practices, but they could be very beneficial for you to add into your Boolean string. Lead dental patient care coordinator, another one. Like if you have all of these terms in your job title, you're going to pull people from dental, from somebody who's lead in dental, lead dental assistant, for example, maybe, or lead dental hygienist. You're going to pull in so many more candidates, and they potentially might apply, and then that's just going to cost you more money through Indeed in the long run. And then for a doctor, this is where you can do shorter, like you can do PEDS or PROST, or you can do DDS or DMD or general dentist. You can do owner. There's a lot of different terms that you can put in here for a doctor if you're looking for an associate too. Now, if you want to have Indeed use smart sourcing to send candidates to you while you're sleeping. Basically, you wake up and then you can look at these candidates. When you already have your job posted, you will have put in your email, or your email will already be populated. And you will say, these are all of the candidates that I want to search for. So this is the job that I'm going to have selected. Obviously, you guys don't really care about the location. You probably only have one location. And then this is the Boolean string that I've added in here. And then I can hit here that says set up alert so that I get an email of any new candidate. And you're going to name it. So that's what it will come through as the email that you get. And so you want to get these emails daily. And then here is the search that I have. So that's another way that if somebody happens to update their resume on Indeed, that you're going to be one of the first people to know, because not a lot of people understand the Boolean search. They might just have dental hygienist, or they might just have hygienist in here. And so they could be getting the wrong people. And then they might just be fed up with it after a few days of it being inaccurate potential candidates to look at. And then they might not ever look at it again. So these are tips to help you to have an easier time to find individuals, to find candidates. Our next point, or next talking topic, is the hiring edge, interviewing mastery for dental professionals. We've got 5 different objectives that we're going to go through. And we have a lot of information in each of these that we're going to talk about. And then we have the offer letter, the onboarding. We have a lot of worksheets and documents and things like that that we can talk about here too. So what are the best practices for communications? It's a great idea to give them options for communication. So also options that you are going to talk with them, right? That you're not just saying email, but you never check your email, or the person who you're going to be letting go, or who's going to be leaving, is reading these emails. So are you going to give them the option of emails or text messages? Making sure that you're getting back to them with a reasonable amount of time. Create uniformity. So what kind of questions and scripts are you going to be talking to them about? If you get a text message from one individual, it should be the same answer for any other individual that you get a text message that comes through, and it's basically the same thing. I personally love scripts. So think about an entire conversation that you're going to have with this person, and script that out, so that if you are not the only one doing hiring next time, that the office is set up for success, and that it's the same hiring practices across the board. Or I always like to say, if you get hit by a bus, what's going to happen? I think a lot of people have those terms. If you need to take a medical leave, or if you are going to quit, you still want to set up your office for success. So set up all of this information, take this and use it for now and forever. Create this uniformity. Frequency. I will suggest you to not reach out to a candidate that has not texted you back more than 2 times. So for example, if somebody applies to our position, we give them a call and then send a follow-up text message at the same time. And then 5 to 7 days later, we will reach out to them again. Depending on how that interaction went, if there was no communication in between, then we won't send them a third message. So sometimes that third message is a yes, and sometimes we don't give that third message. So for example, I recently was talking with somebody that I connected with another office to be a sub, and she was like, I went into the office and I did not enjoy it. I don't think that I was a good fit within the practice, and this doctor is just not getting it. and I'm about to block her. And I'm like, oh no, I'm so sorry. I don't necessarily know how each conversation is going to go. And of course, we don't want to work with people like that, but that could potentially happen. So please be cognizant and be aware, be understanding that your frequency might, how many times you message this person might be a different amount from what they want to receive. So if you are messaging them left and right, and they are either not getting it or maybe you're not getting it. So keep in mind 2 to 3 times. I also like to have an overview of each position that I have open. That not only helps for making sure that I keep everybody in line, that I'm not forgetting anybody, because let's be honest, we all have 1.5 million things that we're doing on a daily basis. But let's say we hire somebody and then turns out they have to move in 3 months, or it doesn't work out for some reason, or they get injured and they can no longer practice dentistry. Having an overview where it will have the candidate's name, their resume, their phone number. I can send you a template for this as well. I didn't initially have this on my list, but I will absolutely add this on here, overview. And this is beneficial so that you can go back if this person doesn't last, or if they have to move or something like that, that you can go back to this overview and say, hey, I remember Sally now. I think she was a really great fit, but she couldn't start for 3 months or for 6 months. Let me reach back out to Sally and see if she could potentially be an option for us now. This is also a good spot to have notes, just really short notes. So if you're like, absolutely not, never, then you can see Sally's name and it says absolutely not for this practice. Then when you get her resume in 3 years from now that she was absolutely not, or she was a maybe, or she was a moving, or whatever that looks like. I would also suggest to keep the resumes, because there are some candidates who they will edit their resume and then it looks completely different from 1 year to the next. Because we have been doing recruiting since 2019, we have a lot of resumes, especially local in my area, because I started here locally to me. I have a lot of resumes for people over the years. So sometimes I will look back and see resumes and what they looked like a year ago. Just 1 second. What that looked like a year ago, and how does it look different? State it. Does it look like there's different jobs in there? Are they completely lying? This is why there's so many great things about having the internet. You know what I mean? I put everything in a Google Drive, and for you as a single office or as multiple offices, multiple locations, I would suggest you to have a folder for each location and put the information in there, put that information into an overview for each position, close them out when you're done with them, so then you can start fresh and you can look at old things, so that everything is very organized and you're not touching base back with people who you no longer want to work with. Again, setting you up for success for anybody else who might take over this interviewing process, that they don't have to come to you every 20 minutes when they find another potential candidate. And then showing understanding. So I see a lot of times in dental boards where people are just really mad, or honestly sometimes just really mean about how somebody no-call, no-showed, or that they canceled 10 minutes before and say that they have a family emergency. They might actually have a family emergency, and that stinks, that's for sure. But what are you doing to help them feel comfortable? Showing that you're understanding. If there is snow and ice, or if there's just like sleet and somebody doesn't feel comfortable to drive, you don't know their worldly experiences to give them any kind of judgment, which is also kind of leads me back to talking about having empathy as your potential new candidate's personality traits. You should also have empathy for them. one of the new offices that I'm working with, I was talking with him and he said, oh, we had the day off because, and I was like, why? I live close to you. I feel like there's no need to have the day off. And he said that it was absolutely a skating rink on his side of town. And I live 20 minutes from his practice. So he was kind enough to know that dentistry, yes, is important, but your employees' lives are more important. So if you can't meet with that person in real life and they don't feel comfortable driving to your practice, it's a new way for them to go into the office, right? It's not something, if they're coming in for a working interview, it's not something that they're familiar with. It's going to give them more anxiety to go into work. Just show them understanding. Now, I'm not saying if it's a no call, no show, especially to a working interview or a shadow day, not saying that you have to give them a lot of grace, but if it's a phone interview and they're late, or it's a Zoom interview and they're late, and they give you a reason why, that's not just, oh, I overslept. Overslept, I think, could be, could go both ways. But are you willing to give them a second opportunity? If you're willing to give them a second opportunity and then they fail the second time, I wouldn't probably give them a third. If you need to give them a third, that's great. But it depends on your comfortability level and what that could look like to the future of your team members. Now, if they no call, no show or cancel last minute, make sure that that's top of mind going forward for anything, especially the first probably 2, 3, 4 weeks of work. If they come into work late, keep in mind that you want to hire slow and fire fast. If they continuously give you knocks against them and you are putting up with them, what does that show for the rest of the team? That they can also do it too, which does not help foster office culture and collaboration. Okay, let's go on to the second one, interview preparation. So let's talk about, does the phrase, tell me about yourself, does it actually work? Not really. People often, for us as recruiters, yes, I think it does. We handle it in a little bit of a different way. We don't necessarily talk about, tell me about yourself. We don't necessarily say it in the sense of like, okay, you just got on the phone, tell me about yourself. We kind of go into a few talking points before we actually ask them to do so. We make sure that we're very friendly, that we have a smile on our face when we're talking to them. We want them to feel that we are extremely friendly and that they feel comfortable to share information about themselves. But we'll get into that in just a little bit, what you can ask them and how you can make them feel more comfortable about telling them about yourself. How can a candidate trick you? Absolutely they can. And this is where it's really good to write down what attributes you want in an individual, because there's a lot out there, a lot of content out there where if they are interested in sales or anything of the sort, they may understand and know that in an interview process, if they take hold of the interview and they show genuine interest and they ask you genuine questions and they've done their homework and they've done their research, they can trick you into thinking that they are the ideal team member for you, but ultimately they might not be. So keeping in mind all of the interview questions, which I'll give you in a moment, keeping in mind all of the interview questions that you can and cannot ask, that you're getting to all of the points that you need to get to. And we've got that shortly for you, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So then also set a structure and take post-interview notes. You don't really want to be taking notes when somebody is talking right in front of you, especially if they're in person with you. But have a checklist so that you know, yes, I've gone through this, or no, I haven't gone through this, or if they go to school at U of M, you just type U of M, for example, or they graduated in 23, you just write in 23, so that you can go back afterwards and you can write post-interview notes, because you want to make sure that you remember all of the important pieces and parts, that you're sharing this with other team members to help you coordinate and configure to get the right candidate into your practice. So taking post-interview notes are very important too. I also love to do positive and negative after each phone call or meeting. What did I like about the individual? What did I not like about the individual? About their personality, about their desires. You know, do they want to grow? Do they not want to grow? Do they say, you know, that's for somebody beneath me is gonna take out the trash, or something like that. What's gonna make them say, or what's gonna make you say yes or no to that individual to get to the next step? And then get prepared for the next conversation. Being aware and going through the list of questions that I'm going to provide to you, and of course ask and add any additional point as well, but put in there what kind of questions do you need to ask next time. Think back to your conversation and what kind of question did you forget to talk about when you were in the moment, when you got sidetracked and you started talking about something else, or your hygienist called you and you need to do an exam or something of the sort. So highlight or write down the questions that you're going to talk about in the next conversation or when you're meeting in person, and what that could look like. And then also, what kind of information about the practice should you divulge in the interview process? I would say a lot. If you're struggling with retaining team members, that's something that could be hard to say to somebody. But this is also, if somebody doesn't want to work with you, then you don't want to work with them either. Where if you're struggling retaining people, that this is probably the hardest thing to share or to keep. I don't want you to lie. I want you to be truthful, but there are some things that you can say that will make one situation better than another. So, for example, you can say, well, we just purchased the practice 3 years ago and we've been able to retain 50% of them. But the 50% that left retired or moved. And so it wasn't for a lack of trying, for example. Those kind of points can be very beneficial, very helpful in the interview process itself. And then, do you want to schedule, depending on where you're at within the step and who you're going to hire, are you going to schedule a working interview, a shadow day, skills assessment, and do you know the difference between each of them? I have an article that I will share with you so you can understand the difference between all three of them. But essentially, a working interview is basically just somebody coming in being a sub at your practice for the day. That one is easy enough to understand. But with working interviews, you need to also have them sign a working interview acknowledgement form, which I will provide to you as well. And so with that form, it essentially says, I understand that I know I'm only being hired on for this one day. And they should, and basically like that this is not a full-time, this is not a permanent position and things like that. They should also be put onto payroll. I know that sometimes that is like, oh man, what a headache and a half. But it's going to be more of a headache and a half if you hire somebody or you bring them in for a working interview and then they have a needle stick, or somebody else around them has a needle stick and they're involved in it somehow. Just be prepared going into it so you don't have to worry about it. A shadow makes very much sense, right? They're just coming in to walk around, to observe, to be a bug on the wall, to see if this is a practice that they're interested in, asking questions, making sure that it's the right fit. And then a skills assessment, this is where you can use a hygienist to not do a working interview, but to do a skills assessment and to have them come in and do a pro-fee or whatever, a filling, whatever is needed on a team member or a team member's family member that you're not going to profit off from. That's the difference between a working interview and a skills assessment, essentially. Is the skills assessment, you're not going to be profiting off from what is happening. Sometimes that's really difficult to kind of know the difference between the two. For front office, you can have them make a fake phone call. For a dental assistant, you can have them mix cement or do an impression. You can have them pour up models where it's not something that's going to be really of benefit to you, but it ultimately will be because they're showing you if they could be a good fit. We are rounding out to the 11 o'clock hour. I want to take a pause before we go on to the next slide, and I will come back in 15 minutes. So I will see you shortly. I'm going to go ahead and mute and do all of the things on my side. Please go ahead and get yourself a snack, go to the bathroom, get yourself a drink. I will return in just a few moments. Thank you so much for the opportunity this morning. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments in the chat and put them to myself if you'd like to. I would be happy to answer those questions for you. And I'd love the opportunity to address them. Thank you so much, and I will see you so soon. All of the things. Okay, thank you so much for allowing that break. I've got a little baby girl and I'm still nursing her, and so I was really hoping that everybody would be okay enough for me to be able to take that little break. So thanks so much for allowing me to add that in here. Getting back into it. So questions that are illegal for you to ask and points that you might not necessarily think about in this stage. And so what this looks like is obviously a few things that are very typical, what a lot of people know about: age, race, color, nationality, sex identity, sexual orientation, disability. Those are all like very well known. Everybody knows about those ones that are typical. A lot of these other ones, though, people don't necessarily know about. And so let's chat about them here. So we have, do you rent or own? Have you filed bankruptcy? Obviously, those are questions that you cannot ask. And personal questions like, are you married? Do you have kids? Who will be watching your kids while you're working? That's not an okay thing to ask. Anything about your kids. Anytime they bring something up about kids, just completely omit it. Like don't add that. Don't ask questions. Just pretend like you didn't even hear about it. Okay. You can't ask about citizenship or immigration status. Don't say something like, oh, what a beautiful accent you have. Where are you from? It is so incredibly tempting to say things like that sometimes. I tell you what, and it's really hard to rein yourself back in. But if you wanted to print these out or have them next to you so that you don't have any kind of discrimination issues, legal issues against you, that would be absolutely wonderful and phenomenal. Go ahead, take a screenshot of this if you want to. You can't ask what country were you born in? Are you a U.S. citizen? You can ask them, are they eligible to work in the U.S.? That's the question that you can ask. Sometimes it's honestly just a version of how you're asking or like how you say the question is what makes all the difference, just like in pay. That's another question that actually I don't have on this list, but it is a question and something that we're going to talk about shortly. One of the questions is you cannot ask, what are you making currently for your pay? You can ask them, though, what do you want to make in your hourly or your yearly pay or salary, whatever form of payment that you're going to be doing. You can't ask them if they're in a union because you could discriminate against somebody. Obviously, dental, there's as far as I know, there's no unions in dental. If there are, there's definitely not a lot of them. You can't ask them their medical history or their drug use. You can't ask them if they have been arrested. You can do a background check. And this is also something that would have to be in your handbook. A lot of people don't necessarily know about how background checks work in that sense. And so for a background check, if you do it in your own practice, you do it for one person, and you don't do it for another person in the same position and working with the same type of things, then you could have some kind of employment problems potentially on your hands. And so making sure if you're going to do a background check, you are going to specify, and you're going to say anybody who works up front is going to get a background check, or anybody who is clinical is going to get a background check. Anybody who works in the office after, after hiring date 2025 is going to get a background check. If you work with a recruiter like myself, anybody that I hire could have a background check, but anybody that you hire after I do the background check, anybody that you hire, if you haven't done a background check yourself, that's totally fine. But it would require me every time, if I'm hiring for your office, it would require me to do a background check on every single person that I hire in your practice. So keeping that in mind, and not necessarily a lot of people know kind of how that works. Now the background check, it doesn't have to come back 100% clean, but you should also have the reasons why you are not going to take somebody on, and then also say, like in your handbook, within reason, for example. So going back to, have you ever been arrested? This goes into the Equal Employment Opportunity Commissions and the Ban the Box laws. And basically it's just, you can't ask it. So Ban the Box is in 37 states, and it covers 4/5 of the population. And this is just making it so that they have equal opportunity, and that we're not just automatically excluding them, that we're giving them at least some kind of a chance. The laws here are a little bit funky. This is something to discuss with your HR professional, as it's going to be different in every state. Like I said, it's in 37 states, not all of them. And so inquiring with your HR professional is going to be something that is going to be key here. You cannot go to their social media and discriminate against them by their social media. I know a lot of offices do, or, oh, there's no slide on the screen. Oh no. Oh, thank you so much for letting me know. Let's see here. I'm not sure why that stopped. Did that work? No, I don't think so. I'm so sorry, guys. At least there's not a ton of information on. It's just, I'm just explaining it. Let me figure this out. So sorry, guys. And I had a screen on top of your chat box. I apologize. It looks like it's sharing on my side. Could you guys let me know if it's sharing on your side? Okay, let's get back into it, because I think, okay, perfect. I had somebody say yes, so you can see it. Perfect. Okay, good. So, oh, good. I'm getting some yeses. Thank you so much. Okay, so for social media, you are not allowed to go to their social media and say, no, I'm not going to go with this candidate because of XYZ. Especially, obviously, if you go to it.
Yes, you can. Like, I should just keep my mouth shut.
So sorry, I had to mute somebody. Okay, so for social media, you'll just have to not go there, essentially. And now I know sometimes it's very tempting, because sometimes there'll be links for LinkedIn, or there'll be a link for Facebook on their resume. You still could potentially have issues with that in the future. So it's because you can look at their age, you can look at their race, their religion, their gender, if they're disabled or anything like that. You're hiring decisions could be influenced by discovering some of these characteristics on social media. And it could lead to legal action. So that's more due to anti-discrimination laws against social media for candidate screening. So again, just setting yourself up for success instead of failure. So I know that that's something that a lot of people do enjoy doing, is looking at their social media, but it's just unfortunately that's something that we can't really do. All right, and these are some questions that you can ask in the interview process, of course, and I'm going to talk a bit about each of them. So, I mean, a lot of them are self-explanatory, and some of them I can give a little bit more context around. For applying to the job. So there's a lot of people, I think I had mentioned it earlier, a lot of people don't like asking or answering the question, tell me about yourself. So this is a way to go around that. And especially if you ask it and then like you just instinctively ask, tell me about yourself. You can kind of go around it and you can say, tell me what procedure you enjoy most. And then once they give you the answer, what other procedures do you typically do as well? And then I've got this little list, and you'll get a worksheet on this as well, so you have the opportunity to look back at these. But then here's just a little list of procedures that are maybe something that's kind of common in the practice, or something that you want to make sure that they have experience with. Not all offices, not a lot of offices have 3D printing. Not a lot of offices have digital workflow where they're using a same-day milling unit. Do you want this person to have experience with milling and staining and glazing and things like that? Do you want this person to work with a lab? Are they going to prepare morning huddles and monthly team meetings? Do you want them to make temporaries? Do you want them to know or understand or be willing to learn about ozone therapy? Are you a single or double booked hygiene? This is also going back to like, what kind of questions do you think that the candidates are going to want to know about? What is like kind of a negative about your practice? A lot of hygienists don't want to do double booked hygiene. So if that is something that you're going to require, that's something that you must talk about, like basically the first time that you chat with them, either the first phone interview or the first Zoom interview, however you want that process to go. And I would also highly suggest, I believe there's a slide a little bit further back in here, but I do highly suggest you to have a phone call first, asking some of these easier, important questions, and then have them come to meet the practice, rather than just having them come straight to the practice, because that's where you're going to get a lot of no-call, no-shows, is if you just have them come straight to the office without actually talking with them on the phone first. I don't know if people realize that, but it's just something that could be a little bit, I don't know if scary is the right word or not, but it's something that it just will help ease their mind if they know a little bit about the practice before they just walk into it. Okay. And so some of these will make sense, but for some positions, but some won't. So another question that you could ask, especially if you're going to be interviewing a hygienist, do you prefer a Cavitron or piezo? If you have both, you could offer that. Do you have the guided biofilm therapy airflow system? Do you want this dental assistant to know how to do implants, because implants is kind of complex, you know? Do you place implants? Do you have experience with single implants or all on X implants? Have you only restored them? Have you placed them? Have you done like PRP with implants? Figuring out more about the actual procedures themselves, because, and also just asking additional questions around that. You might spend a bit of time talking with them or working with them during this process, but it's really to benefit you in the long run. Okay. And then now after that, then to kind of tell me about yourself, you can say what got you into dentistry, or who got you into dentistry, or why do you stay in dentistry? And then asking, are you comfortable with these hours that we have here? As I had mentioned earlier, some offices, they might work from 8 to 7 or from 7 to 7. Are you going to work 6-hour days? Are you going to work 12-hour days? Do you give them the option? Are they going to work 4 10-hour days? Do they need to leave at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday because they have other prior engagements, for example? Those are all questions to get out in the beginning before you fall in love with this individual. Figure these questions out first before you get too far into it. You can also ask them, what city do you live in, and would this commute be okay for you? You cannot ask them, do you have a valid driver's license and your own car? Because that could also be discrimination. Now, this is more for dental offices. If you are a dental lab and they have to drive from office to office, then you can ask them, do you have your own reliable transportation and a valid driver's license? Because it's something that they're going to be doing on a daily basis. But as a dental assistant or as a hygienist, as an office manager, what's the frequency that they would actually need to go and run an errand or go and do something for the practice that they would need to actually be in their car? So knowing that, keeping that in mind ahead of time, that you can ask, what city do you live in? Because let's be honest, with Michigan winters, and sometimes depending on the time of year, Texas and Florida and California and North Carolina, everybody's got snow right now. Louisiana has snow, and so there's a big opportunity where, let's say, if you're living in a northern state and you know that the roads around you, if you're living in a small town, kind of rural, if they're really windy and turny, if you have to go around hills or mountains, if you know that somebody driving 40 minutes away, they're just not going to make it there on time, that's your option to say that you are not wanting to work with them. But that's another one of those things that is kind of a negative, but something that you just have to kind of play into it and just kind of consider in your hiring decision. Again, remembering that not all of these questions make sense for your office or potentially the role that they're applying to, but some of these will make sense for specific roles. So as a hygienist, you could ask, how would you describe perio disease to a patient? What's the cure? And then what do you advise to patients about perio? Just asking them to describe what that looks like. Some offices, when I ask that question in an interview, some offices, they will say, that was a terrible answer. And I'll be like, why? That was a good answer for most offices. So asking some of these questions and really honestly, the answers I think is going to make the difference, the make or break difference for your office versus another office. Have you or how would you use a 3D scanner for diagnostics for patients? Sometimes I put this in here to remind myself that the hygienist, that I'll have to tell the hygienist that this office requires you to do 1 scan a year for your schedule as a hygienist. That might not necessarily be the case for an assistant. You might have a goal of 5 per day as an assistant, or 3 per day, or 80% for your assistant, or something like that. So fill in the blanks there with whatever makes sense. If a patient is upset about their billing treatment schedule, this is more like a front office situation, how do you help resolve this situation? And you can give them a for example. You can say, describe to me how you would handle a situation when a dental procedure doesn't go as planned. So how do you confront that? And this would be more of a situational. So if you do endo and something happens with an endo, or there's too much tooth structure gone, and you didn't know about it, or you are doing a crown and half of the enamel breaks off and you were like, oh man, I really needed that. There's already not enough tooth structure on here. How do you, as the assistant, handle the procedure? Or let's say you're taking an impression on a half edentulous patient and a tooth comes out in it. That assistant is going to be firsthand in there. They're going to be the ones that are going to be hands-on trying to help figure the situation out. If something goes wrong, like half the enamel busts out when you're doing a crown, the assistant is going to probably rely on the dentist. The dentist is probably going to have to be the one that says that. But if you're interviewing an associate, then that's a great example too. What does your day look like? Do you have your own column? Do you share the whole schedule with another assistant or another hygienist? This is, again, very situational for each practice, because some practices will have several different options. I mean, from one practice to the next, it's going to be different. I know that there's some larger corporations or some larger practices that they'll have, let's say, 5 columns of hygiene and only 4 hygienists, or only 3 hygienists, and they have to just kind of fit it in there. I don't particularly like that, because I feel like you're probably always going to be behind, but that gives room for people to cancel out or to no-show, which is definitely something that you don't want in your practice, and you should be actively trying to prepare for the opposite of that. How would you describe the best boss or manager that you've ever had? I think that question is definitely not asked enough. And then also to reflect back and give, like, honestly reflect on that answer. If they give you an answer and you want that to be true, so hard you want that to be true, but it's just not true, you should know deep down inside that you should not hire this individual, because it is not going to be in their best interest. They're not going to stay with you long term if they're describing their best boss or manager in a completely different way than what you are going to be described as. Where have you grown in dentistry in the last 5 years, or what kind of growth are you looking for in the next 2 to 4 years within your career? I've had offices tell me that continuing education and growth is so incredibly important for them. They want us to ask, what kind of growth are you looking for in your career in the next 2 to 4 years, rather than them asking. They want to see it even before they get the opportunity to meet the individual. So where do you want to grow? Where do you want to do? There are some people that we interview, which thankfully they're not a ton, but there are some people that they say that they don't want to go and work at a chartless office. You know, chartless offices have been around since '99 is the first one that I've heard about. And you know, if you're 25 years behind, then your skill level is probably not up to par. There has been so many new things that have come out into dentistry just within the last 5 years alone, that if you're 25 years behind, you are not doing your patients a justice. You're not doing them, you're doing them a disservice. Okay. Another great question to inquire about is, if the patient is nervous or scared, how do you put them at ease? And can you give me a recent example of what that could look like for you and what you have done? If you have a large block in your schedule that cancels or no-call, no-shows the same day, what do you do with your time? And this is where, like, they should waffle a little bit, because a lot of individuals will say, well, I will just get caught up in the back. Well, that doesn't seem like the best answer. If you want to have a really good team, a really good culture, yes, you want to get caught up in the back, but an ideal answer would be, I'm going to see if I can move any patients up. I'm going to go to hygiene and see if there's any patients that are still here in the chair that we can work with. Or if their next patient could maybe come early, we could do a filling. We could switch a few things around to see what could potentially work out. No call, no show is obviously a little bit harder, but if it's a larger block, like 2 hours or 3 hours, then that makes it easier. But, you know, ultimately seeing how they can help the rest of the team. This is where, when you ask a question like, are you a team player? They're always going to say yes. Who's going to say, no, I'm not a team player? Who's going to say, no, I want to work, you know, on an individual basis. I don't want anyone to come help me or talk to me. No one's going to say that. So you have to ask questions that are kind of beating around the bush, maybe, and that it's not just a yes or no answer. Have them tell you situational answers that will then help you to better understand what kind of a clinician or team member or employee or teammate they're going to be. What do you like best about your team environment now? They should be able to tell you at least one thing that they like about their team environment. If they say everything is trash, they're probably going to say everything is trash about your office too. And then this question is similar-ish. What do you wish the team that you work with now did differently? So if they already had answered that in the last question, that's totally fine, which they probably should in the last question. But if they don't, then this is how you'd follow it up. What do you wish the team you work with now did differently? What do you think makes a positive office culture? And this, again, kind of goes along with the last two questions, but what points should they be making about their office culture that they want to see going forward in their next position? And what part of your day do you look forward to the most? I think that is incredibly important. What part of your day do you look forward to most? I kind of asked a similar question 2 slides back when I said, tell me about the procedure that you enjoy most and what are the procedures you typically do. But this could be something completely different. I have gotten a lot of answers similarly to, I really enjoy the patients, or I enjoy fighting for insurance. I think that those are always kind of great answers to give. I love when somebody says that they love the challenge that dentistry creates because every person, every individual is different. Again, the answer is not just an answer. And this is why I said earlier that you should be writing down the positives and the negatives, because you're probably going to forget what answers they had given, and highlight what you remember most about each thing. Go back through all of these answers and try your best to remember the answer that they had given you and write them down after you have met with them, and then go back to the positives and the negatives. Are you comfortable bringing new ideas to the table at your past office? And how can we get the same results for you here? Another way that you could ask this that, in my opinion, isn't as great would be something like, are you comfortable with confrontation? Or are you comfortable with bringing new ideas to the table? This is formed basically the same, but gives you a better result in your answer, because you're asking, how can we get the same results for you here? Which means, do you want, or is this individual going to learn best via video? Do you need to give me an example of how you did it again? Teach me. Show, do, teach, I think is the way that people usually say. What will give you the best end result? And then tell me about a time where you're able to help save cost or eliminate waste within your role or your organization, whether that to be quickening a procedure, finding a new company for the same or different products, etc. This question honestly is kind of hard for people to answer a lot of times, because sometimes it's just something that they do on a day-to-day basis. If they give an example and you say, oh, that is wonderful, when were you able to do that? If they say like 20 years ago, you could ask them, why did you give that example? Is that the biggest example or the most impactful example that you could give me? What was your thought behind that? And see what they can tell you. What's the best way for you to hear feedback or constructive criticism? That will help you to understand what kind of a person they are and how you can get the best and most work out of your team members. What's an area of weakness that you're trying to grow on or improve upon right now? I always like to ask, because I get asked this often, do you mean what procedure? or personally or professionally, I always like to tell them in whatever way you like to tell me. Because if somebody is working on themselves really hard this year, if that's their goal, they should also, that will form into dentistry. So if they're just talking about themselves and they're not talking about personal, then let them answer that for personal. I think that is, people shy away from that too much, and they want to know, what are you working on? What's a weakness of yours in dentistry, for example? I don't think it always has to be in dentistry. How would you describe your personality type? Or another way to ask that is, if somebody else or your current team members, your family members, your friends were to describe you, how would they describe you? What keeps you in dentistry? What keeps you here? What do you like in dentistry that keeps you? Why should you stay in dentistry? A lot of times the answer is patience, and they like the procedures. They like that they're still learning something every day. Again, these are just like kind of compiling positives or negatives, depending on what their answer is. If you're getting one-word answers in your interview process, or like one phrase and that's it, and they're cut off, that can be really difficult to have that individual working in your practice, in my opinion, because either they're not going to open up, or they just don't care, and this is just another job. And you can kind of see their wheels turning. What do you like in dentistry that keeps you here? You can see their wheels turning with that answer a lot of times. And then what are you looking for in an hourly pay? Like I had mentioned earlier, you cannot ask, what are you currently making? But you can ask, what are you looking for in an hourly pay? It's basically the same end result, but just a legal way to ask it. And then do you have, this is for the offer letter and the onboarding stage. This also has a really good worksheet that's attached to it, and we'll look at it at the end. But do you have a working interview or a shadow day or a skills assessment scheduled? I think it's incredibly important to bring the person in if their schedule allows, if your schedule allows. Obviously, if you are having to fire somebody and you don't really want to have a lot of disruption, that makes it really difficult. But you should be honest and transparent with this individual if that is the case. If you are planning to not have them stay with your have somebody else stay with your practice, you should be transparent about why that person didn't work out. Because if the person that you are looking to hire, this new candidate, if they feel that they are the same, they feel that they're just going to get fired anyways. Have their back. Make sure that they know that you're not just going to hire them because you think that this is a perfect fit, that they also have to know that it's going to be a perfect fit. Do you have an employment application that needs to be filled out? This is from a whole checklist that I've got, but a lot of offices don't do employment applications because a lot of times it's very similar to their resume on Indeed, which, going back to that, the resume on Indeed, probably 80 or 90% of the resumes on Indeed are inaccurate because Indeed makes it difficult to update their resume. So keep that in mind, that you're going to get a lot of resumes that are not great, and that you're going to have to ask, hey, it looks like you, what do I say? It looks like you have, X, Y, and Z on your resume, but you didn't mention that when you were telling me about the previous practices that you were working with. Can you tell me a little bit more about that situation? So employment applications, if they're lying on their resume, they're probably going to lie on an employment application as well. Also, my headphones are dying, so I'm going to switch over. Hold on just one moment, please. Beautiful. Okay. So thankful that I have way too many AirPods. And then, have you given the offer letter? So sorry, there was a spelling mistake there. Have you given the offer letter and have you gotten it signed and returned back? Something that is incredibly important is to tell the individual, if you're meeting with them in person, or if you're sending this over an email, or if you're giving them a call, that you say, here's the offer letter. Please don't sign it. I want until like within 24 hours, right? I want them to think about it. I want them to sleep on it. They can sign it within 24 hours. I want them to think about it. They need to know that this is a very important decision on their part, and that they have the ability to ask any question that they want to get to their desired office, if this is it or if this is not it. Again, I know that it's really hard if you're like, this is the perfect person for us, and we want to send you an offer letter, and then you're giving them an out. But if you're giving them an out, they're going to either leave now, or they're going to leave in 3 months or 6 months, and you're going to start the process all over again. And like I mentioned, it takes 6 months for a new hire to be at all profitable, especially if you end up having to fix what a new hire has broken or done or not done, really, for that sense. So do you have the background check, the employment verification, the reference calls? Are those all completed? This is like we're finding the right individual. We're ready to move forward. We're ready to pounce. We love this idea. We want to continue with this individual. And these are the last steps before the offer letter. They kind of go hand in hand, kind of just checking off the boxes, and you can kind of do this within a 24, 48-hour period. Do you want to give the handbook and have them sign it before they start? Where are they at within that process? Is there certain areas that you want them to read? Do you want them to read the benefits section, things like that? And do you have an accurate job duties list, which we'll talk about in just a moment? I've got a worksheet that I'll send to you so you have the ability to take a look at what a lot of other offices do for their job duties, which their job duties is not the same thing as a job ad. I'm sure you probably know that, but it is not the same thing. Do you have a non-compete or a non-disclosure or contract of any kind that this individual is going to need to sign or to look over? What kind of time do you want them to return it in? Do you want them to return it in 24 hours, in 48 hours, in 7 days? When do they get the opportunity to essentially say, no, this isn't for me, and please leave that door wide open? Give yourself grace on hiring. It's going to be a constant adjustment when you begin the hiring process throughout all of this. And this is why I say to document and write down everything, because I think it's easy to forget steps when you're in the meat of it and you have so much that you're doing. And then let's see here, has their license been verified? There's a website that I can send to you. I don't have that on my list of things to email at the end, but I absolutely will. License verification. And it's good for all states, and you just click on that state and you just verify that their license has been is accurate and that they don't have any pending issues against them. And then confirm with them their start date and give them clear expectations on their daily arrival and departure and their lunches. Also, before they start, do they need to get any shots or any vaccines? Depending on, are you working in a hospital? Do they need to do TB testing first before you say yes, and then eliminate any and all other candidates? Making sure that you're all up to date on those things too. And then share with them the do's and the don'ts of the practice. Is it okay for them to eat at the front office? Where can they have a snack, or if it's only in one lunch area? Where can they have their phones? What does that look like? Some people will want to make sure that they have their phones next to them or in their pocket, because if their kid has an emergency, make sure that they have any and all information gathered so that they can give it to their loved ones in case something happens. They can't pull out their phone in the middle of a procedure because they're doing an implant and like they need 6 hands and I only have 4. Give them all of the do's and the don'ts about the practice. And then what scrubs are they going to be wearing, or business clothes? Do you obviously probably need closed-toed shoes? Do you have a certain color that you want them to wear? When will they be getting their scrubs or their jackets? That's another important thing that sometimes people forget about. And then being the new guy, everybody else is wearing black and you have pink. That's not very fun, you know? So this checklist is really going to help you to figure out what exactly will help that individual to make them feel most comfortable in the practice. Where's their workstation? Do they have their own operatory? Do they have their own desk? Are they going to move from one spot to the next? Where can they put their purse or a backpack or their lunchbox? Where can they put their coat or a hat? And where can they put their boots if you live in a snowy place? Where can they put their anything, right? Make sure that they feel comfortable, that they're not just plopping something down and hoping and assuming, because when it is your first day, you as a hiring manager, you as a business owner that's listening to this right now, you might not have had to have this first day in a long time. And so you may not think about all the same things that they're going to think about. But it's so important. It is so very important for you to think about their side of things, how they might be feeling. Also, you will have to tell them who their direct report is. If you have a smaller practice, this is probably just going to be the hiring manager or the doctor, the associate. They might have a lead dental assistant. There might be a clinical admin person that is going to help them. But make sure that they know each other, that they have each other's phone numbers, that they are able to set up times to talk to each other, which we'll talk about in the next slide, for going over how they're doing within their schedule and things like that. Get them signed up for HIPAA and OSHA training. A lot of states require this to be done before their first day of training. I would highly suggest you to have these documents together ahead of time. And I know that I'm kind of spitting a lot of information at you guys, and you're probably like, why are you telling me all of this? Again, this is to help with the onboarding. 90% of new grads leave their first office within a year or less. That's across the board. That's an associate, that's a hygienist, that's an assistant, because they don't know what kind of questions that they should be asking. This is why I'm trying to say, be as open and truthful and transparent as you possibly can be, because you want that longevity to last longer. And so with truth, with honesty, with information overload, sometimes is helpful. Sometimes information overload is too much and you don't want to do that for the individual, but make sure that they're getting the information that they are asking for. Set them up in the payroll system before their first day of work. This should be a given, but don't have them do it the first day. A lot of softwares you can put in their email address, and the software will automatically send it. We use Gusto. My husband's business uses ADP, and everything can be filled out and done electronically. I mean, we're in 2025. We shouldn't have to do anything that's not electronic these days, and it feels very antiquated. Now, everything can just be stored on that software, and please do yourself a favor. And if you're having them fill it out on paper, help yourself legally and just have them do it. Like, just switch over to a different payroll system and do everything online. And then get their passwords set up, or get them started on which passwords they will need for your CRM, your dental, like EagleSoft or Dentrix or Open Dental. Get them set up for that. If they need to use Blue Note or Weave or OpenPhone, any other softwares that they're going to need to know, this is an excellent time to get them caught up on passwords. And then put in the schedule. When is their license and CPR going to need to be reviewed? When will they need to get whatever credit? So if their license needs to be renewed in 3 years, in a year and a half, or at 2 years, rather than waiting until the 3 years and then a week before, making sure that they have all of their credits, because you don't want their license to lapse. They should have control over this, but If they forget about it and their license lapses, that's also on you as the business owner or as the manager. This is something that you should be paying attention to as well. And so checking in with them at halfway through point, or a year before or a few months before, so that they still have that ample time to be able to get in everything that they need. HIPAA and OSHA classes should also be added into the schedule. And then when benefits will be added in, or when they will be starting their benefits. So if you have paid holidays that start at 90 days, or if you have PTO that starts at 6 months, or if you have retirement that starts at 12 months, those are all things that should be in the schedule before you actually hit that. So you have a little bit of time to adjust, to add them into payroll, to do all of the things that you need to do. And then ask them, even before they start, will they need time off for the holidays, or for spring break, or for summertime? Do they have any days that they're going to be requesting off? This is like basically asking them, probably within the offer letter, onboarding, within like the first week or two, ask what days that they're going to need off. Because it's really, I don't know if embarrassing is the right word, but it's very hard sometimes for an individual to ask it's really hard for an individual to ask sometimes, when can I take these days off? Or this is an important day for me to take off because of X, Y, and Z. It does not necessarily mean that it has to be like Christmas, for example, or days of Hanukkah, for example. Just take those days and block them off. You don't have to ask them additional questions. Okay. And then make sure that you're doing check-ins every day for the first 10 days. And then at 2 weeks, and at 3 weeks, and at 4 weeks, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 weeks. These are more checks for education and clarification and for understanding. And at the 90-day review, this person should be able to catch up to the majority of everything in the practice, with the exception of a few things. Some offices, they do, A to Z. They do everything in the practice. And if that's the case, that's really difficult. But if you are an endo office and 7,000 codes, if you are only using 7,000 codes and the individual still doesn't know the difference between an anterior endo code and a posterior endo code, that's kind of a really big red flag if they don't know that at 90 days, right? There's not a lot of codes that you use with an endo, and they should be able to figure that out pretty quickly. So putting all of these things into the schedule, but also making sure that they are giving you a timeline. If they're like, there's been so much going on in my life, I haven't been able to think about this or research this on my own time or at home, then tell them or advise them, when can we reach this goal? This is where I want you to be at 90 days, at 6 months, at 12 months. This is where I want you to be at. Let's figure out how we can get there, and then go backwards from there. So if it is 6 months and I want you to be proficient at implants and endo and composites and crowns. If you are trying to get them completely proficient in 6 months with all of those things, plus all of the other tasks that they have to do on a daily basis, of course, check in with them halfway through and give them baby steps of how they can achieve that, and how the office can help them to achieve that, where the growth will be at. And then I would highly suggest the day of the new hire starting to have breakfast or a snack for the whole team, something basically saying like, we are welcoming you with open arms and we want you to be here. I can give you an unfortunate example of the emergency exit situation here. I don't want to have to give this example, but I did hear about this, and I think that it's very, very worth sharing. I had heard from, and this needs, the emergency exit situation, this needs to be talked about even before the individual starts. So the story that I had heard was somebody who talks publicly about emergency situations and what they need to do for their team members in how to help them in situations, right? So if there's a fire, if there's a tornado, if there's a bomb, if there's an active shooter or an earthquake, depending on in your area, if you have an eye washing station where that's at, if there's a needle stick and documentation and where to go. So the example was, there was a sub that was at a practice, and it was the first time that she was there. She got there a little bit late because of traffic, and she went to go do her work, and the fire alarm went off. And they thought that it was just that they didn't realize that it was actually a fire. They just thought that it was, a test in their building. And, them, along with however many other suites, went outside, and she didn't know where to go. She didn't know anybody. It was like first or second patient. So she still didn't really recognize a lot of faces. It was a whole medical facility. So it was like everybody was wearing scrubs. So like the scrubs weren't just a dead giveaway, right? And so they thought that she was still inside. They didn't know where this person was at. And so they sent the firemen back in, and there was 2 or 3 people that had passed away. The firemen that passed away from going back in to find her. And turns out she had just gone home. And obviously that was not a good idea on her by any means. But I hope that this example will allow you to see and to understand that, those lives could have been saved by just having a little bit of a conversation of, if there's a fire, here's my cell phone number. I'm your emergency contact if there's anything that happens. I want to make sure if there is an emergency that you are taken care of and that we can help you. All things like that, right? So I know that is not a fun situation that I had to just share with you, but hopefully you will do that going forward. And then another really important thing is, do you have your SOPs in your office how-tos in place? This will really help them, especially a front office team member. If you can go through each area, so your assistant one of your lead assistants should do this, your lead hygienist should do this, your front office team member should do this, you should do this as an associate. If there is anything that you do on a daily basis, write it down, and then keep a piece of paper in your pocket for the next 2 weeks, or like keep it taped to the wall so you can remember, like, this is the office how-to that I need to make for this, this, and this. And then over the next few weeks or few months, depending on how much time you have to wait to do the hiring process, right? Make sure that you're documenting those, that you're completing them, and that everyone's putting things together. Now, if you're having everybody write down what they do, you might have 2 or 3 or 4 different people writing down how to open the office. You don't need that. You can all come together after the 2 weeks of making sure that you have the full list of, what your office how-to is. Divvy it up, see who is slightly different from another person, and then just create it. You as the hiring manager, as the office manager, you as the business owner, you don't have to do all of these. You can review them all before they're publicized to any new hires, but this will really help anybody who is coming into the practice. This will also help them to understand, and then you can say, there's a Q&A in your office how-to. Everything is listed in there of how you need to be doing things. This also means that any team meeting that you have after this is completed, any team meeting, you should also evaluate, do I need to update my office how-tos or my SOPs? Because you probably will talk about things in your team meetings that you will need to update. You probably update and change things rather than doing it once and forgetting about it, because that's also not helpful. I know there's things that are ever changing in a dental practice. So just keep that in mind, and go ahead and put this on your meeting minutes. If you have a meeting minute overview, I always say it at a practice, but in your meeting minute overview to update your SOPs. standard operating procedures. Okay. And then, do you have any training videos or education for the office? This goes hand in hand with the SOPs. But let's say, for example, if you have a front office team member and you always get them trained through ADOM first, making sure that they know and understand where those training documents are at, how they can get a hold of them, if they can do this after hours or only during business hours. Spear Education, I know, has a lot of training videos. There's a lot of coaches, consultants, coaches that also will have training documents that your office will want you to go through and to read. And this can really kind of make or break a practice, because if you're going to bring on a front office team member and they don't know how to handle cancellations over the phone, who's at fault there? Maybe it's the person who's training them directly, but also, could you have figured this out and had them do training a week before they actually take any phone calls? And they, in their downtime, when they're working alongside somebody else who is in the practice, and their downtime, they could always just look that over and figure out how they can learn on their own. Or if the person is busy and they're like, I really just need 10 minutes to be able to complete this, and you're not quite ready to learn it yet, I'm so sorry. Can you go into these education videos or these SOPs and read through? This is the next thing that we're going to talk about. Can you please read through how to utilize the credit card machine, or how to use Care Credit, or how to take on a new patient phone call, how to get insurance breakdown? What do you do in your practice, and what is listed out in that sense? And this is also daily routines and the office like checklists, like what do you need to do on a daily basis? What do you need to do on a weekly basis? What is going to be helpful for them in this role? Give them a notepad, a notebook, a pen, a document on the computer where they can take notes for themselves. If they are a kind of person that they want to look them over, they want to have it in their pocket. So any place within the practice, just keep that in mind. Be prepared for that. I have a lot of fillable journals on Amazon that I've created. You can just search my name, Wendell Dahman, in Amazon, and it will pop up. And I have one for probably every single position. I don't think I've forgotten any positions, but I have EFTA and ETA and RDA, and I have hygiene, and I have associate and front office team member and insurance coordinator. I have all of the things. So if there's any specific position that you don't see in that journal and you want one, I'm happy to make one. It doesn't take me all too long. So let me know, and I'm happy to help you with that too. And then, as we discussed in the last slide, give them and have them create goals for themselves in the office for the first week, for the first month, for the first 6 months, and for the first year, and have them be able to break it off and chew it. And it is something that's easily obtainable for them, that it's a reasonable goal for them to be able to achieve. And if they don't hit it, why is that? Should you have helped them to be able to succeed with hitting their goals? Or is that something that they really should have done on their own? I think that when goal setting happens, especially within a dental office or within a practice, I think people often overlook that there should have been other hands in the pot to help with getting this started, to help complete the goals. Okay. So remember that when you're making goals, or when your new team members are making goals. These are the free resources that I'm going to send to you, in addition to the overview that I said, and then the website license verification. I have a few questions that I got sent to me, and I want to make sure that I'm going to address them. And then I'm also going to bring up some of these free resources so that we can talk about them and how to utilize them and things like that. So some of the questions, let me read through them here. a lot of questions about performance evaluations, how to make sure that they are working well with their assistants, how to keep their assistants motivated, how to hire in rural areas. Oh wait, okay. So let's see here. Let's start from the top on this point here. This person's got lots of questions, which I absolutely love. So performance evaluations. This is where, like I was mentioning, it's really helpful. I think it's a slide, yeah, to have check-ins. And with these check-ins, when you're doing them so frequently, you're going to have a lot less issues with any kind of performance evaluations if you're constantly checking in with them. Now, this does not mean micromanaging. This could literally be just a conversation between you and the individual for 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the day and say, you have my full attention. I want to know how I can help you best, especially within the first 10 days. Those are really, really important days. And then afterwards, just making sure, like at the end of 2 weeks, you can be like, oh man, when we were working together, it seemed like we had a lot of, 15 DO composites this week. And this is what I like to do more than what we have been doing. And this is the tool that I like to use. Some doctors will just ask for it right away. Some doctors will just say, screw it. I want to hurry up on this, and I don't need this to go. What do I say? I can just do it now. I don't want to wait for you to go get the instruments that I want. I'll just do it now. And so that's where at the end of the second week, the end of the third week, and fourth and fifth and eighth, that's where you can kind of hone in and say, this is what I really prefer. This is what I really want. If you're not bringing it up in the moment, but making sure that you're writing it down, giving them a date or giving them a time, maybe when you're talking about these things, those are all really important as well, so that they can think back to what the situation was, what the scenario was, and how they can actively help themselves to just be better. Going back to the question. So, how do you work well with your dental assistants, and how do you keep them motivated? I think that question, I think, is really just, are you finding the right person for your practice? Because ultimately, if you're finding that you're having to keep your dental assistant motivated, where's their weak point? Was it you hiring them? Is that their weak point? Or, let me close this out. Okay, so where's the weak point at? Is it that they are not, a lot of times if somebody's not motivated, they just don't want to be there. Does that mean that they don't want to be a dental assistant? Does that mean that they don't want to be a dental assistant with you at practice? Does that mean that they just need growth? Because honestly, that honestly just could be the answer, that they just need growth. And that could just be the solution to the whole problem. With working on the growth factor and the momentum that an individual can bring, I think honestly that's probably the only answer that I can really give that will help to keep somebody motivated. Hopefully that helps. Okay, and then another question that I got is how to help hire in rural areas. So I live in Michigan, and there's a lot of people that reach out to me that need to hire in rural areas. If you can hire somebody that does not have dental experience, that is fantastic. Now, with that, I know that can be really difficult. So I want you to also ask yourself, what resources can I give to this individual before I bring them into the office? Or can I have them come into the office and they do all of this research, they watch all of these videos on ADOM or a dental assisting course that they can take online. You put together a whole bunch of YouTube videos that align with your dental practice, and give them the opportunity to watch through them all. And then talk to them about it at the end of each day. What did you learn? What do you think you would want to tell your friends or your family members? Like what is interesting to you from what you learned today? That could be really helpful to ask questions in that manner too. But if you're looking for somebody who is a licensed individual, probably more like an associate or a hygienist, I would highly recommend for you to talk to the reps and ask them to talk to your team members and ask them to post into Facebook groups. There's Facebook groups across the country. There's Facebook groups across the world that can help you in situations like this. If you need a certain person, I'm happy to send Facebook groups that we have. I'm in probably like 200 or 300 Facebook groups, and most of them are for dentistry. So I'm happy to send those to you as well. In rural areas, it just really kind of stinks. It's kind of just the luck of the draw sometimes of when you can get somebody. In my area in Michigan, I just heard yesterday that there's a facility, MCDC, is closing. And if they're closing, if you know what date they're closing, then maybe a week before they're closing or 2 weeks before they're closing or a month before, whatever, as long as you're being tactful about it, you could go to those individuals that work for MCDC if they know that they're closing. If you know that they're closing, then they probably should know that they're closing. Then would reach out to those individuals and say, hey, I heard that your facility is closing. I would love the opportunity to interview you to see if you might be a good fit in my practice. Let's chat a little bit more and see if this could be a good fit for you. It's going to be a lot more networking. You can also go to the state association and inquire, see if there's anybody there. Sometimes there's even recruiters at places like that where they'll have like a job board and they'll say like, here are individuals that are interested and here's offices that are interested, and kind of mix match. I don't do that at this current time, but that's something that could potentially be done. A question: when it comes to job ads, what are common mistakes that you see in dental postings? Good question. I think the worst, and I can go back to this slide. Let me find this slide while I'm chatting about this. I think the worst that you can find in a job ad is when the office will say what they don't want. So obviously we talked about what we don't want to help us find what we do want in an individual, but here we go. Let me share this. So if you don't want to hear these things, this is something that you don't want to put in your ad, because you're going to sound really negative, right? I don't want somebody who is going to do X, Y, and Z. I don't want somebody who's going to show up late. I don't want somebody who is not going to present treatment plans. I don't want somebody who, isn't friendly. Instead, that's just telling them what you don't like. And that's just telling them that you're just going to complain about them once they leave. It's the same when you're interviewing for candidates. If they just talk crap about the past office that they worked at, they're just going to talk crap about your practice when they don't want to work with you anymore. So instead, flip everything. And this also kind of goes to what kind of requirements are you not able to flex on? If you say that there's so many requirements, people might be really turned off with that too. And so obviously as a hygienist, you're going to have to say the requirement is you have to have a hygiene license. I mean, that's just a given. But you also don't have to say like, you need to have CPR, you need to have first aid training. There's a lot of things that they don't have to have that you can provide them with, or you can help them with, that does not have to be a list of requirements. I'm trying to remember the percentage. I think it was like 86% of females will wait until they are nearly 100% qualified for a position before they apply to a position. And the statistics are that 81% of dental professionals are female. So that's eliminating a huge percentage of people that might not apply to your job if you say that you need them to be first aid trained and BLS, and they need to have, X, Y, and Z. If they need to be licensed in local, if they need to be licensed in nitrous, rather than saying, if you don't have blah, 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 or just completely omit that and just talk about that when you get into the interviewing process. For a requirement for a hygienist, probably should really only be your hygiene license. If local is something super important to you, then put local on there as well. If nitrous is something super important, put nitrous on there as well. If you want to do soft tissue laser, that's another thing that you could add on there. But less is more a lot of times in situations like this. I got another chat. Here we go. Okay. Another question. What do you do when a candidate says it might not be a great fit now, but it could be in the future? This is where it's super helpful to add notes into that overview that I'm going to send to you at the end. And so if you can, keep in mind to put this information into the notes about each individual or into the overview, and say, this person's not going to be ready to work with us for 6 months or for 12 months. That's an ideal spot or ideal place to put them, is in the overview. So you can come back to them. Again, keeping organized, staying organized, not only for yourself at this time, but for yourself in the future, is going to be key, and it's going to help you for hiring across the board. Another question here. How do you manage salary differences within the same position at an office? This is where wage transparency is incredibly important, and why I was saying that it's important to be understanding that everybody in the practice should or could know what everybody else makes. It kind of stinks when you have to hide that, and when you're hiring a new person on, you have the ability to share at that point. If you have had the same 5 or 10 employees for 10 or 15 years, and you didn't give them a wage increase from COVID, they are so far behind with their pay. It's ridiculous if they haven't gotten a wage increase in the last 5 years. The standard of living, the percentage was 8% in some areas in 2023, I think. Looking up and researching that, a lot of times it's standard increase is 3% per year, plus some, but with COVID and with inflation, it's drastically different. So making sure that we're paying attention to that too. Another question. How to know when you should hire more staff or an associate? Ooh. There's a few really great answers to this, I think. So hiring for an associate, do you want to go down a day or two and then give the associate the days that you're not working, depending on how many chairs you have, how many operatories you have? Or for hiring, do you want to bring on additional services where then your time is going to be more dedicated to sleep apnea or to implants or to oral surgery? Like, where are you looking to grow within your practice? Do you want to, what else? I was thinking of another option, another thing. Are you just too busy and you need to bring on another person? So if you are one doctor or two doctors and you're like, I feel like we could use another assistant some days, but not all days, you could bring on a rover. And you could, truthfully, I think that the word rover or the term rover is not used in a positive way. A lot of times I see it as a positive way. If I could make the money that I make as a business owner being a rover in a dental office, I would do it every single day of the week. I love being a rover. It would probably be one of my favorite positions because I get to help the entire office. And one of the things that I like most about being in dental is that I get to help people. That's one of the best things, in my opinion, about dentistry, is that I just get to help people. I didn't know before what I wanted to do. And then I got into dental and I was like, let's get to help people all day. This is so cool. Now I get to be a recruiter and I get to help people all day find something that they're passionate about, where then they can help people all day. So it's not just myself that gets to help somebody all day, every day. Now I'm helping, it's like a ripple effect, right? And that's why I stay in dental and why I love dentistry is because I have that ripple effect now that I get to help more and more and more people. So when should you hire more staff and when should you hire an associate? That really honestly, I think depends on each individual in each practice. What are you willing to give up for the services that you're offering, or what services do you want to add? There's a kind of a deep dive that goes into that. And then another question we got in here. How to hire the right person or retain staff within your budget in terms of salary and benefits, especially when other offices have better pay and benefits. Good question. We work with some offices that they have several locations, and since COVID, since inflation has been happening so drastically, this is a really big pain point for them. And it obviously hinders their practice from being able to find good talent because they have several practices and they're not comfortable increasing the wages by X amount all at once, because then that lowers the cost from the top down, right? And so they're looking to bring on additional services that their existing team members can utilize so that they can essentially make more money for the practice with it being ethical. So for example, ozone therapy is something that they're bringing into their practice. Another thing that they considered has been creating a dental assisting school at their practice, which means that they can have a profit from bringing those dental assisting students in, getting a profit from that, as well as helping their team members to grow and to feel more comfortable and more happy, more satisfied in their role in what they're doing. And then in turn, they see who the good students are and they get to offer them a job at one of their locations. And so it's a win-win-win situation. And then they can work with somebody like myself, where then if they tell me these are the positives and negatives about each of these individuals, then I can help those other individuals get placed into other practices. And then it's kind of like a trade-off. If I get to place this one person, then I will give you a free hire, or I will give you contact, in this way, or something like that. There's a lot of different ways around that. So let me go back to that question. How to hire the right person and retain the staff within your budget in terms of salary and benefits. You can also find other things that are benefits that don't always necessarily equal wage or equal money. Sometimes it equals time, and time, of course, equals money. A lot of times when you are a business owner, you equate time and money very similarly, but it depends on the structure of your practice and how all of that gets into play. So for a benefit, can you offer flexible hours, flexible days, flexible time? There are a lot of individuals that I interview, and let's say the practice is open from 7 to 4, but the office says it's a hard stop. I have to have somebody that starts at 7. Well, another practice might be okay to say, well, you can start at 8, but then you have to stay back an hour, and then the other team member is going to leave. And then, so you're going to be, the other team member is going to be there an hour before you get there, and then you're going to stay an hour later. So you have to flip flop, and you have to do it that way. Another thing that can be of a good benefit is HSA or FSA, where you can offer an HSA through a bank, a credit union, a lot of times, and sometimes it's no cost to you. The HSA is set up through the bank. They set it up and you just put it through their payroll. And you don't necessarily have to put any money into the HSA, but you can help them in the way that this is pre-tax. I can't remember if I had mentioned this earlier. So if this is pre-tax, a lot of individuals don't necessarily know what pre-tax means. And so they're also relying on you to help them understand these benefits. And so this probably wouldn't be a good conversation in the video, but this would be a good conversation to ask them, you know, here's a list of benefits. Can you look through them and stop talking? Have them look through it and say, I need to understand this more. I don't understand this. I don't know what an HSA is. I don't know what a health savings account is. I have never utilized one. I don't know how this can be a benefit to me. HSA can sometimes be used for childcare. Imagine getting childcare pre-tax, like 30% off. That's a lot of extra money in their pockets. And now, obviously, you can't tell them or ask them, are you going to use it for childcare? Plus, it doesn't matter to you what they're using it for. But you can inform them that this also works for childcare if that's something that you need. And then continue talking. Again, they don't need to answer you if they have childcare. You don't need to ask them if they need childcare. You just continue talking. Okay. So you can talk to them about it without them needing to answer yes or no. Don't even look at them when you say, you know, childcare, look away so they don't even feel obligated to shake their head yes or no. Okay. Now, in terms of if you do need to give wage increases, just a second. If you do need to give wage increases, you should do it across the board. There are some companies that I work with that say like 0 to 1 years or 0 to 2 years, this is how much you're going to make. And that's graduating from like a dental assisting school or from hygiene school or something like that. If you have 2 to 5 years, this is the wage. If you have 5 to 7 years, if you have 7 to 15 years, if you have 15 to 30 years, and there's like a $2-3 range in there. And so you start at the one, let's say you have 2 years of experience, you start at $20 an hour, and then it goes between $20 and $22. So then at the end of that 5 years, you should be at $25 an hour or $23 an hour. I don't remember what I said now. And so kind of doing it that way, then it's the same across the board. Now, when you're hiring people on, that's where it can be a little bit tricky, is to fit those people into a pegboard. And I'm sure, as you probably know, a lot of people don't like to be fit into pegboards. It's not an easy or fun situation to be in. And not everybody is going to be exactly the same. So you might have 2 years of experience in a general dental practice, but in your practice, you might do endo and implants and ortho, and you might have them do denture adjustments if they're allowed to do that. They might do coronal polishing if they're allowed to do that. And other people might not. You might be able to have the assistant place fillings and another assistant can't. And so there's a really wide variety in there. And so that's where it's really hard. This is just kind of if the person has 15 years of experience and they're able to do all of that versus 15 years of experience and they only have general dental and they have really only done fillings, dentures, partials, crowns, bridges, things like that. It makes it really difficult to feel that you're offering the correct wage to the right person when things like that happen. So, yeah, let me see here. I got another question over here. Just one moment. I had a few people text me previously. I apologize. To ask questions rather than putting it in the chat here. So things that will lead to retention in the long run. I know that I had mentioned several different points about retention in here, and I think that this is also where a coach can come into play a lot of times. If you don't already work with an office coach, I'm happy to refer you to several of them, but office coaches can be a good and big help here. I think there's a lot of people in dentistry that if they just have the same thing going on day after day, they don't work on continuing education, they don't work on bettering themselves, they just get stagnant, that's when you're going to lose people. I think it was 64% of people have moved or shifted within dentistry in the last 3 years, 2 or 3 years. That's a big percentage of people. There's a lot of movement going on. There's also, they say 80% of private practices by 2026, I think by the end of 2026 or 28, 80% of private practices will be purchased. And with that, it's probably, I'm hoping, only going to get easier for private practices to retain those individuals, because there's so many people who don't really care for corporate. I'm involved with some corporate practices right now, residually involved with some corporate practices that they have so much movement right now that from the top down, the people at the bottom or in the practice versus being in the C-suite level, people in the practices, they feel all this turmoil. They feel all of it. So if you're in a private practice, it's probably going to be a little bit easier for you to retain people, but that does not mean that it's going to be a given. You still will have to work for it. You will still have to do team outings. It will still be a really great idea to interact with these individuals. You should actually care about them too. That's another thing that people forget sometimes, is to actually ask questions about their personal life. Now, if somebody is very against giving you any information about their personal life or anything like that, don't push them too hard. If they don't want to share that with you, that's fine. A question that I do like to ask in an interview is, what's something that you're passionate about outside of dentistry? If you feel comfortable sharing with me. They don't have to answer any personal questions when interviewing. They don't have to answer any personal questions, and that's really fine, which is why I say, if you feel comfortable sharing. They could just say, I just really feel passionate about dentistry. I love what I do here. I love continuing education. And I would totally accept that answer. That would be absolutely okay with me. I think retention really also depends on each individual. Why are they in dentistry? What keeps them in dentistry? What keeps them motivated in life in general, that you can play into what they themselves actually need and want. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me see. I think there was one more, or maybe I went through that one already. So this individual was talking about mentorship and autonomy. There are a lot of people that we interview that complain about having somebody that's micromanaging them. I think it's important to understand in the interviewing process or in the onboarding process, or when you are doing the reviews and checking in with them on a daily basis for the first 2 weeks, really important to understand what do they feel is being micromanaged, and what is the level of autonomy that you need. I always like to give my team members a by when. Sometimes it's hard for me because I'm like, well, our team structure, sometimes we have a really big workload on one day and sometimes we don't. But sometimes they'll say, can you get this done by the end of the day? It looks like this schedule is probably all right for you to get that done. If they don't get it done by the end of the day, I'm just assuming that they're going to get it done the next day. And so it's not that big of a deal to me if they are not able to get it done that same day. Okay. And if they don't get it done by the end of that day, you should be able to clearly see why they weren't able to get it done. And then it should be able to come back the next day, or give them an extra few days. So if they say, I can get it done by the end of the day, then you can tell them, today's Tuesday, I'll be able to make sure that I have it on my desk by Thursday, and kind of give them those expectations. And so you're not hounding them, but you're also making sure to ask them far in advance, which I know sometimes I'm very guilty of, not asking my team members far in advance for something, because sometimes end of day could be super stressful, and they might have a schedule set in their mind of what their day looks like, even if you have other things on your schedule. So an assistant might need to go through and do all of the ordering, or check all of the lab slips, or go through and update their SOPs. And that's what they were wanting to do today before this next person comes in for training or comes in for observation or something like that. So just keeping in mind that you are working with their schedule as well, I guess, is essentially what I'm getting at with that. Let me go to, unless you have any other questions, I know that we are at the Q&A portion right now, but I wanted to go back through some of the worksheets and share with you guys what I have, and see if there's any questions that anybody might have regarding these worksheets, and how I might be able to help answer any questions for you. So let me bring that into another document here, get everything else out of the way, essentially. Okay, so I have this working interview acknowledgement form. As you can see at the top, it says, I'm not your HR specialist nor an employment lawyer. You are using this, and it's not been verified to make sure that everything is correct for your office size, your setup, or your state. Use this at your own risk. This is something that you should read through. So if you have a working interview, that you should have the individuals utilize this form and fill it out. They know that this is just going to be a one-day working interview. Again, like I said, that this should be something that they are, that they're filling out like a W-2. They're filling out everything as they are going to be an actual employee. So it's important for them to fill this out too, because sometimes when you're filling out all of those papers, they might assume that they have the job, but you're not assuming that yet. Also thinking about that, if they are assuming that they have the job, you should be listening into those keywords that they're telling you about. Like, it's so great that I get to come back next week, or I'm so excited to work with you more. Make sure that your team knows that this is a working interview, that this individual is not hired, and that they can bring to your attention if it sounds like this individual thinks that they're actually being hired in a full-time capacity. Job duties, I also have a list here for you. Let me share my screen again. I think I've got things so that it's a little bit easier to utilize. So job duties, this is where we are setting you up for success, as well as your team members up for success. You don't have to have these job duties in the job ad. I definitely don't recommend for you to have all of this in the job ad, but once they're hired, they have the list of job duties that is going to be asked upon them, and that you're telling them. I do tell individuals in the candidate video, in the video that I share with each of the candidates, I do tell them what they are going to be doing. So as a hygienist, I'm going to say, typically we do 60-minute profis. You're going to be updating medical history. I usually have it in a little bit of a different order when I say it, but either way, I have them set up and break down in sterilization of your own room. You're going to help do documentation of clinical notes daily. You're going to do perio evaluation and charting that goes along with it, documenting blood pressure. You're going to co-treatment plan with the doctor, which also, if you're going to co-treatment plan, there's a big conversation that's going to happen around that. And you might not do co-treatment planning for a while to make sure that everybody is up to par with that. And then we have the dental assistants, a lot of tasks that they typically will do. And then you can, if you're going to print this out, or if you're going to put this into another document, you can fill this out here with additional duties for your assistant. This is just very generalized for most practices that we work with. And then front office, team members, depending on what duties they do, and then associates, what kind of things that they're going to do as well. I think that here is another document that I will share with you as well. Again, just setting you up for success. So an office manager weekly checklist. This is, again, something that you're going to edit or to change, but if you have something that needs to be done daily or every other day, this is something that can really benefit a new team member to feel the structure, because when you get thrown into an office and you don't remember or don't know what's next, it is incredibly stressful. It's probably been a long time since you as a hiring manager or you as a business owner has had to be in the new guy's shoes. And so that's why I'm presenting all of this information for you and your success. So what are some things that your office manager is going to do? And then maybe some of your monthly checklists, as well as like your dental assistant. Here's a few different checklists that you can utilize, and your hygiene and your associates. So keeping these all in mind. I also have, as we talked about in this webinar, a lot of these points is the pre-hire checklist. And so here's a link to understanding the differences between the working interview and the shadow day and skills assessment. You can click on that link. It brings you to a website, an article that you can look into. And then do you want an employment application? I can customize one for you if you'd like. There's an offer letter that I will show you in just a little bit. And then here is the license verification website that you can utilize for any state. There's the working interview acknowledgement form that you can utilize. This is the website that I use for background checks if you are not a client of mine. If you're a client of mine, I'm happy to do the background check on your behalf, but this is a pretty inexpensive website that you can utilize. And then here are some questions that you can ask when you're doing reference calls for an individual. And the questions are set in there in a certain way because you can't ask any and all questions that you want to ask. So be understanding and cognizant of the questions that you can and cannot ask of the references. I guess technically you can ask any question. It's really what kind of answer do they want to give. However, if they are still close with the individual that you're interviewing, you don't want to ask questions that could potentially get back with them. And so be aware of the questions that you should be asking and the questions that you should not be asking. So there's a list of questions in there. You can call to do employment verifications. These are basically just like, okay, when you've decided that this is the right person for you to hire, but they don't know it yet. So this is just making sure, what kind of things do I still need to do? You can even fill dates in, like when are these things going to be done? And do I need to do this? Are you going to need to add them to malpractice? Or do they need to sign a non-compete, non-disclosure, a contract of any kind, things of that sort. So the offer letter is pretty self-explanatory. It is another one like this is, I'm not your HR professional. This is just something that you can utilize if this is helpful for you. Obviously, you're going to have to fill a lot of these things in. And this is what I had mentioned earlier, but I want to drill this in. It's very important that you give this offer letter, but then you don't make them sign it in front of you. You give them time to sign it. You give them 24 hours to sign it, or the weekend, so that they can sleep on it, they can think about it. You are wanting to make sure that this is the right hire for your office for a long time versus just right now. And this is going to be the right position for them too. So the job duties, the list I had just sent you, you can add those job duties in here. And then let's say, for example, the requirements, you need a dental assisting license, you need a radiography license, you need to be able to lift 25-pound boxes, 50-pound boxes, whatever you feel comfortable with. And then stick to that. You know, if you're then going to require them to move the office chair and they decide to sue you, you know, your offer letter said only 25 or 50 pounds. And so be understanding that you're binding to all of this if you're having them sign it. And then just some physical requirements that's obviously you're going to have to be aware of if you're in a dental office. But if you are interviewing and bringing on somebody who doesn't have dental experience, they don't necessarily know what they're getting into. So having all of this here too. Is there anything required by you of state for OSHA and HIPAA that they will need to keep updated on? And is this something that they have to do? Do you need them to have an updated x-ray license every year? You know, this is also a state-by-state thing, which is why this is just a sample letter for you to utilize. This is not something that I think that you should only use what I have in here. Make sure to pay attention to what is going to work for your state. Let's see here. I had mentioned that I have a worksheet for where your candidates are going to be looking for. And first you're going to type out and look for, you know, defining what are you looking for. These are our core personality and value traits. And then check to see where and on what platforms candidates are going to be looking. And how do you measure up? What kind of things you need to be evaluating, and then some action items that you need to take away. This is going to be a really good use if you are in a team meeting. You can work with your team with this. I also have heard people utilizing monthly department meetings and quarterly team meetings. This is another spot that you could have them do in each department and then come together for a monthly team meeting as well. Oh, that's interesting. All right, and let's see here. What other kind of questions do you have? I think I've answered them all. Let me see if there's any other ones that I had missed. I think I might have gotten to them all. I think I've covered a lot in the last 3.5 hours, 4.5 hours, whatever that is. Please let me know if there's any more questions that you have for me. Otherwise, we can be done a little bit early. If anybody has anything else, go ahead, send it to me. If not, then we can be all done and we can sign off. Now, since we are at the end of this and where you had signed in or signed on, I had let you know that I will give you a certificate for completing this, and super excited to do that. So if you're interested in that certificate, please send me a message and I would be happy to get that over to you. I know that not everybody's going to want it, so I'm not going to send it unless you are actually requesting it. So let me know if you're interested in that. But otherwise, I think we could be done a little early. Sorry, but also thank you. So, okay, perfect. Oh, yes. Okay, Dr. Leslie, I will get that over to you. Let me make a note because this chat will probably be gone. And perfect. I'm getting some messages into mine as well. All right, and I will write down these other names. Anybody else, since we're going to be closing off, anybody else who's interested in it, either send me a message or send me an email and I would be happy to get that over to you. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm super excited. I am hopeful that this is able to answer a lot of the questions and a lot of the pain points that you might have in your practice. Let me know how I can be of help to you. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.